to the Chief Minister. First listed to ask a question is Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister, as the Chairman of the State's Employment Board, bring members up to date with the Al-Witri case and whether a sum of damages has been agreed with his lawyers since the states have lost all their cases? Thank you, sir.
Chief Minister.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I was trying to clear an awful lot of notifications that I can't keep coming up. So it remains an active case, as I'm constrained slightly what I can say publicly. It is reviewed every time pretty well that the SEB meets, and my understanding is that there is correspondence that continues between the respective legal parties, sir, and I think that's probably as far as I can go. What I can say is two things, sir. One is I have for a while been quite keen on certainly a presentation being made by law officers to state members at some point to explain some of the legal implications in the overall scenario of what the case means. And for me, and most particularly, so there are certainly 3 or 4 members who have paid particular interest, and particularly that I wonder if that might be of use to them. But sir, that's probably about as much as I can say, sir, in the public domain. Sir.
Supplementary question, Deputy?
No, sir, I think that's all I need at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Following the report from the Fiscal Policy Panel, which is warning that the island's recession may well be deeper than had previously been expected, could the Chief Minister outline what he and his government will be doing to ensure that the poorest people in Jersey will be protected in this economic crisis?
Chief Minister.
Right, sir. To an extent, the Senator has asked me this in a variety of ways in the past, so I think I refer him back to one of the answers I gave, I think, since this side of Christmas, which includes things like the various parts of emergency legislation that's been put in place, the overall support that's been given to islanders, where all the co-funding schemes and things have supported about 1 in 4 islanders in work. Obviously, we have committed, sir, to the overarching poverty strategy. We've done I think also important, sir, is the GP fees, for example, subsidising for up to 12,000 islanders on income support. Not forgetting, sir, that firstly, the general support that was put in place both last year, where special payments were made to people on lower incomes, sir, and also things like the Spend Local card, which went to everybody. I know those are one-offs, but they all represent money. And equally, sir, the present support, where, for example, the social security rates have been reduced, and that will be continuing for the next couple of months. We are, sir, acutely aware of potentially the problems ahead, and if we need to put extra measures in, sir, we will do. But equally, sir, the benefit of these income support system that is in place is strong and is, sorry, sir, muted, supporting people where needed, and we have put extra measures in place.
Supplemental question, Senator Mezey?
Yes, thank you, sir. The Chief Minister very briefly referenced a poverty strategy. What specific actions will be part of a poverty strategy that will lift islanders who are living in poverty out of that poverty?
That's a lovely political question, sir, but on the basis that the poverty strategy is basically scheduled to be produced for the end of this year, I think it'd be a bit early for me to start commenting on that at this stage.
Well, Deputy Aye.
Thank you, sir. Chief Minister, since the collapse of Bet Index trading as Football Index, does the Chief Minister believe that lasting damage has been done to the island's reputation as a centre for regulated gambling? Thank you, sir.
Sir, I think the short answer is no. There are always going to be, sometimes there are going to be challenges, but the crucial thing, sir, is how we deal with them and making sure that the regulation is appropriate and works. But I think, sir, at this stage, it's probably too early to comment much further. But I think the short answer, sir, is that Jersey as a whole still remains a well-regulated jurisdiction.
Supplementals?
Please, sir.
Yes, Deputy?
Thank you. Does the Chief Minister accept that there was a regulatory failure in this case? And will he hold an inquiry into how they received the betting licence, having been described in a report in January 2020 as being an exceptionally dangerous pyramid scheme? Thank you, sir.
So I think before I commit to something like that publicly, I'd be very happy to meet with the deputy and talk it through. I'm not averse, and obviously just talking to the relevant departments and officers. I'm not averse, if the facts warranted it, sir, to some form of review to understand exactly what went wrong. But I'd be happy, sir, to meet with the deputy to discuss further.
Well, Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask the Chief Minister about the Care Commission's Children's Care Home Services 2020 overview report. In that, it states that independent inspectors come over, the independent person comes over every month, in theory, to inspect the Government of Jersey's children's services, and that is part of their regulatory requirements. However, during the pandemic, these visits were not, many of these visits were not able to be taken in April, May, June, September, October, November, or December, because the person, the independent person appointed by the government, is based in the UK. Given the failure of this person to undertake their role because of their geographic separation from the island, will the Minister, particularly now that he has operational responsibility for children and education, will the Chief Minister ensure that the independent person is in future someone who is actually located in Jersey?
So I'm very again happy to look into these exact scenarios surrounding the independent person. We do also need to recall that one of the crucial things of the independent inspection is that they are arm's length. And I think certainly, particularly around children's services as a whole, there's been a lot of view that sometimes people have not had confidence in effectively an internal control process delivering that kind of level of independence and oversight that's needed. And that is what probably, sir, I would go back and check it, but that's probably why an off-island, if you like, regulatory role has been applied. And I would certainly explore, sir, whether that's capable for that person to be located on island, but I suspect on the basis it's a periodic inspection regime, not a 24/7 inspection regime, that from a cost effectiveness point of view, that's not appropriate. So I suspect, sir, I'm happy to go away and check that the rationale for having somebody off island is to make sure you've got that arm's length, complete independence on dealing with what in the past, as we all know, has been a very sensitive area, sir.
Supplementary, please, sir.
Yes, indeed.
The Care Commission's report highlights the many instances of missing children who went missing during their time in care for various periods of time. This is obviously of grave concern to all states members and indeed all islanders. And with that idea of geographic separation in mind, it is known that certain senior members of Children and Young People Education and Skills operate a large amount of time outside the island. Isn't it the case that the people best able to care for the children in Jersey are people who are actually based in Jersey?
So just to be clear, the point made from the previous question is that it was the inspection regime essentially that was off island, not the people caring for children. I think that's hugely important.
I've then extended that to ask about people who are actually in the department, but not
very well. Can you please, if you could answer the question, Chief Minister, there are a lot of people who wish to ask questions of you and very little time left in which to do it. So,
sorry, sir, that's just thrown me. Apologies, sir. Could the deputy repeat the question, then, sir?
Very well. I'm sorry, Deputy. Please.
The link here, sir, is the lack of being geographically located in Jersey. So as well as that independent person, there are senior members of Children, Young People Education and Skills who spend a lot of time operating not from Jersey. Now, we know that many missing children, the report highlights this. And I'm wondering, sir, if the Chief Minister believes that the people best able to ensure the safety and the care of children in Jersey are people who are actually based in Jersey.
Sir, I'm pausing, sir, because depending where that question goes, you end up in personnel scenarios, which obviously we are meant to be constrained in what we discuss. As an overall principle, sir, I absolutely agree that the people directly caring for our children should be on island, and sir, in that instance, they are, sir. In terms of other levels, sir, it depends on the roles that are being performed and whether there's any evidence of any impact on that performance, sir. And I think that's, given time, sir, that's probably as much as I can say. I'm happy to have that discussion again, sir, with the Deputy.
Deputy Garden.
Thank you, sir. It has been stated that the annual reports and accounts for 2020 will be signed by 31st of March 2021. Would Chief Minister advise why it is a delay in signing off state's accounts?
Sir, I'm not entirely sure it was the 31st of March. I thought the drop dead deadline, sir, was the 31st of May. And sir, as I understand it, matters are being finalised as we speak, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy Garden.
Yes, thank you. It has been stated publicly by the previous Chief Executive that the accounts will be signed by the 31st of March. If Chief Minister aware about particular issue that causing a delay, and when will see accounts presented to the states?
So my objective, bear in mind, sir, is the accounts process, and that sits in Treasury, but my objective, sir, would be that the accounts are presented properly to members sometime around the next sitting, sir, which is the 11th of May.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister state when we can expect to see a gender pay gap report for the public sector, please?
Sorry. Apologies, sir. I actually thought it had been published, but so I advised that it's anticipated sometime in the next couple of weeks, sir.
Supplementary, please, sir.
Yes.
And it was stated in the response to the original scrutiny gender pay gap review that companies would be allowed to voluntarily publish their gender pay gap. Now, given that we've had a pandemic, could the Chief Minister state a time by which he would expect and encourage companies to start voluntarily publishing their gender pay gap data, please, short of any legislative changes?
So I think, bear in mind with the impact of the pandemic, but I think at this stage, I'd always caveat that, sir, we are hopeful we might start seeing some data coming out towards the end of this year, sir.
Well, Senator Pallett.
Thank you, sir. As a follow-on from written question 161 2021 and the answer provided, which I thank him for, could the Chief Minister confirm that the Access to Justice Jersey Law 2019 has in fact been given royal assent, and that a scheme has in fact been drafted? Could he also explain why is it taking so long to lodge the Appointed Day Act?
So the significance of the Appointed Act is it does start the clock ticking, sir. And when I was updated on the draft proposals, sir, and scrutiny have been, we've all been reactivated, bear in mind, with the impact of the pandemic, but basically over the last 6 weeks, is that some of the I have asked, as in the written response, sir, I have asked certain questions, including the financial impact, both on the legal sector, sir, as a result of the proposals, and also on the state's finances, i.e. the taxpayer. Once we get those information subject to the outcome of that, then hopefully we'll be in position, sir, to start to get the Appointed Act lodged. And at that point, sir, the clock starts ticking for getting the scheme in place. The intention at this stage that the scheme is still on track, sir, to be live from the 1st of January of next year. And the timing on that, therefore, sir, is to get it into the Assembly, hopefully for debate and approval sometime in September or October, I believe so, from memory.
Supplemental, Senator?
Just very briefly, sir, I just really want an assurance from the Chief Minister that there will be no further delays here, and that his department is giving it the focus this deserves, because this is such an important issue for Irelanders, the access to justice.
Sir, it's certainly been given the focus. I would just make the point that it's all been balanced off by all the other considerations we've got, but we are very much focused on the delivery on the dates that I have outlined, sir.
Deputy Ward. Deputy Ward. Yes.
Sorry, sir, I didn't realise you'd come to me so quickly. May I ask the Chief Minister, which of the policies outlined in your 2018 manifesto have you delivered upon, and which of those do you intend to deliver upon by 2022? Thank you, sir.
So the reality is there's no way I'm going to be able to answer that one in sort of 30 seconds, but so we are achieving some of the areas that I committed to in that time, including making progress on population, restructuring of the organisation, culture change of the organisation, of the strategy, serious work being done on the hospital, and obviously maintaining our basic principles within taxation of labour and simples.
Supplementary, sir?
I'm afraid there's no time for a supplementary, Deputy. We've reached the end of the question period for the Chief Minister.
Sir, there were in that session some rather long questions and some rather long answers. So did you not?
Well, I was going to make. Firstly, I've already extended us into injury time by some 2 minutes, Deputy Southern. Secondly, I was going to make the general observation at the end of all of the questions and answers that I have noticed that the return to the Assembly has not prompted any increase in the succinctness of questions, nor indeed of answers throughout the entire question period. There have been some quite long questions verging on small speeches, and there have been some very long answers, really taking us beyond the 1 minute 30 seconds guidance for answers. I was exercising some measure of leniency because the first question period was quite lengthy and had not that many questions in it, but we will have to be stricter going forward. So thank you for that observation. Very well. That brings all questions to an end. There's nothing under J and K. We move on to public business. Before we start public business, there are a number of applications to be made by the movers of propositions to the Assembly to enable those propositions to be taken and listed on the order paper to be debated during this sitting. The first item is an amendment to P11 2021 minimum wage increase lodged by Deputy Southern. Deputy, do you wish to make the proposition under Standing Order 26.7 that the lodging period be reduced to allow the matter to be debated at this sitting?
I do indeed, sir. Do I need to give a reason?
It's entirely up to you, but of course it's within the gift of the Assembly whether they agree or not.
But the reason being that I didn't see a concrete consultation proposal until the 2-3 days before lodging my amendment. It was appropriate to respond to what was coming to me. Thank you.
And is that proposition seconded?
Seconded, sir.
Yes. Does anyone wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Martin.
Yes, sir. Just to say that we have no objection. I fully understand the deputy met with me the Friday before he lodged the amendment and realised there were some technical problems. I have no objections to him taking it as amended. Thank you.
Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. I was just saying I was seconding it.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Does any other member wish to speak? Well, could anyone, I'm going to take this on a standing vote in the event that nobody indicates that they would wish to vote to the contrary and wish to have a formal recorded vote. So could anyone indicate now if they wish a recorded vote as opposed to me taking it on a standing vote? In other words, anyone who wishes a vote against or a recorded vote, please indicate now in the chat. Very well, I will take that as adopted on a standing vote. And the next item is the lodging by the Minister for Health and Social Services, the draft COVID-19 Amendments, Extension and Suspension Regulations, P25. Minister, do you wish to make the application?
Yes, sir, I'm grateful. I do wish to make the application. P25 and the following proposition, P27, will enable us to continue our COVID response to the extent needed throughout the coming months. I'm sure we don't want to be in a position where we cannot address any public health issues and cause harm to islanders' well-being. I hope it will be supported, sir. Thank you.
Are you making the proposition for both of them at the same time?
May I do so, sir?
Well, yes, it's up to you, but you'll soon find out if that was a good idea when members indicate a desire to speak. Is that proposition seconded? The proposition to be
Yes,
allowed?
sir.
Yes?
Sir.
Does any member wish to speak on that proposition? No member wishes to speak. Again, I will take this on a standing vote. If anyone wishes it not to be taken on a standing vote, but on a recorded vote, could they please indicate now in the chat? No one's indicated a contrary view, so I will take that as adopted on a standing vote. The next is the Safe Travel Guidelines Review Panel. Deputy Ward's panel would wish to make a similar proposal for the lodging period in connection with adjustment of green travel and regional categorisations ahead of the reintroduction of safer travel policy, P35. Do you make the application, Deputy?
Yes, I do. Thank you, sir.
Is that seconded? Does any member wish to speak on that proposition? Similarly then, I will take it on a standing vote. If anyone wishes a recorded vote or a contrary vote, would they indicate in the chat so we know whether we can take it on a standing vote? Nobody's issued. The Conitâb of St. Juan would like a recorded vote. If we just wait, and I'll ask the greffier to post a link into the chat. The link is now posted in the chat. I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting.
If I may, I've been unable to vote and I don't know why, but
Well,
I have a vote recorded as poor.
I'm prepared to take that as we're going through teething problems. So yes, Deputy Southern, that's fine. I'll record you as a poor. The proposition is adopted. 34 votes for, 2 votes contra, no abstention in the link, and a further 4 votes counted for in the chat. The other two matters are P35, lodged by the Minister for the Environment, draft illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing Jersey regulations. You wish to take this together with P38, Minister, or do you wish to take them separately?
Together, sir, if I may.
Well, then that's
do you wish me to propose that now?
Just a second. Then that's also to be taken, so the Minister asked, with P38, which is the draft sea fisheries TCA licensing of fishing boats, amendment of law and regulations, Jersey regulations, and the Minister is proposing that both P35 and P38 are taken at this sitting. Do you wish to make that proposition then, Minister?
Yes, if I may, sir. Just briefly, as Senator Gorst mentioned in his answers this morning, we are in a situation where we have an amnesty regarding the sea fisheries agreement, which was done by the UK and the EU, and that amnesty expires for the big vessels but at the 30th of April. And so I am in a situation where, although these items have only just been lodged, one of them on Friday and the other one yesterday, this is an extremely complex matter. The law officers and the law drafting department have worked heaven and earth to get to this point. So in proposing this, so I thank them. It is a matter of great public interest. We do need to fulfil our obligations under that agreement, and it will, I believe, there's an overwhelming case for it. I hope the members will support debating this today, sir. Thank you.
Is that proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Deputy Sir Martin, you wish to speak?
Thank you, sir. Sir, in the Assembly, there's a regular list of people who object to the shortening of lodging periods. They've been silent today, but we have just voted on 5, I believe, where we've agreed to shorten. And I'd just like to point out to PPC that maybe they need to look at this again. If we're not careful, we're setting a precedent today whereby anybody with anything can come at any time and get lodging period shortened. Having said that, sir, I will absolutely be voting with the Environment Minister on this, because fishing regulations, in fact, all the things we've done today are important. But I do worry about the precedent we've just set.
Very much indeed. Does any other member wish to speak? No other member wishes to speak. Conor Tarbison Brillard.
Yes, thank you, sir. In the same vein as the previous speaker, these are very, very, well, I speak to the fishing regulations, they're very fundamental. And my panel hasn't had time to scrutinise them in detail, but and we would have preferred to. But notwithstanding that, as the previous speaker mentioned, we wouldn't wish to delay the process any further. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Conor Tarbison. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak. Then I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful for the two speakers in their support. Just to highlight the fact that, of course, we've had to do, because we only, like everybody else, found out the details of the TECA 4 days before the end of the year. And obviously the effort has had to go in to concentrate on how these licensing scheme will work. So I think, although we haven't had a chance to be able to take the scrutiny panel through the fine wording of this particular draft amendment, what we have been able to do is to brief them on the intentions and the approach to licensing, which the Sea Fisheries team have come up with. I think is very comprehensive, sir. But with that, sir, I make the proposition and ask the Assembly, ask for the appeal, please, sir.
You called for the appeal, therefore you'd like a vote to be taken in the link?
Yes, please.
Very well. I'll ask the greffier then to post a voting link in the chat. I open the voting and ask members to vote. The vote is on taking P 5 and 38 at this sitting. Well, if members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, ask the greffier to close the voting. Proposition has been adopted. 35 votes for, no votes contra, no abstention in the link, and a further 3 votes I count in the chat. Very well, that finishes the housekeeping in terms of what will be debated at this sitting. We now move on to public business.
So, should I? Sorry, sir. Should I
beg your pardon? Yes, Deputy Ward, you wanted to give an indication. Please do.
I just remembered very quickly. So P20, the proposition I put towards amendments landlord licensing, I would like to delay the reading of that from this sitting due to the work that's been undertaken by the Minister. I'm not withdrawing the proposition. I have emailed all members to let them know that I would delay debating of that to a future sitting, and it may be withdrawn at some date, but just so that members know that it will not be debated at this sitting, and I have emailed all members.
Yes, which was the P number for that?
P20, sir. I believe it's there.
Yes, it's been moved to next to the licensing for dwellings. It's already been moved to the 11th of May.
Okay, thank you, sir. Brilliant. Thank you.
Very well. We now move to public business, and the first item of public business is the minimum wage P11 minimum wage increase P11 lodged by Deputy Southern. And for the purposes of this debate, the main respondent will be the Minister for Social Security. Of course, the time limits apply as adopted by the Assembly on a previous occasion. Deputy, you've lodged an amendment to the proposition. Do you wish to take it as amended? And are members content that we take this one as amended? If there's any problem with that, please indicate in the chat. No? Very well. I ask the greffier to read the proposition as amended.
The states are asked to decide whether they're of opinion, A, to request the Minister for Social Security to bring forward the necessary legislative amendments to allow for the minimum wage to be prescribed for 2021 and 2022 without a referral to the Employment Forum, and to request the Minister to ensure that any prescription of the minimum wage takes into account the view of the Assembly that 1, the minimum wage should be set with regard to the median wage. 2, from October 2021, the minimum wage should be set at the level of the low threshold, that is 60% of the median wage. And 3, by October 2022, the level of the minimum wage should be lifted to the hourly rate of £10. B, to request the Minister for Social Security, when appointing members to the Employment Forum under paragraph 1 of Schedule 2 of the Employment Jersey Law 2003, to appoint at least 2 members who are representatives of third sector organisations with an interest in the alleviation of poverty. And C, to request the Minister for Social Security, in accordance with Article 19(1) of the Employment Jersey Law 2003, to refer for examination to the Employment Forum the potential for the minimum wage to be set at the level of the Jersey living wage, and if this were considered feasible, when the minimum wage could be set at that level.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And before I start, may I say what a joy it is to see living human beings again, even those with whom I disagree politically. It's a wonderful experience. I'm sick to death of sitting in my office talking to the wall. It does sound, it just feels like going crazy. Having said that, my intention today, despite the consultation that's been proposed in response to my proposition, it's my job to try and persuade you that this is the right thing to do. And I start with a slightly disappointing comment. It says, in the comments of the Minister, it is disappointing that this proposition has been scheduled for debate in April in advance of the outcome of the consultation exercise that the Social Security Minister had published, which seeks views on the issues set out in the proposition. A copy of the consultation paper is appended. The review of the minimum wage process was agreed as part of the 2021 government plan by the Assembly at the end of last year. And there it is. It was indeed agreed. We will review the way in which the minimum wage is agreed. Full stop. Just a few words. No mention of consultation. No mention of consultation lasting 7 weeks at a time when the Employment Forum is not trusted to be able to conduct a consultation, but the department is, apparently. despite the short notice. It would be inappropriate, they say, to support this proposition whilst a public consultation on the same subject is underway and members are asked to reject this proposition. And I draw members' attention to the front page of my minimum wage increase, where it says lodged OGREF on the 25th of February 2021. Had the Minister brought her consultation before that date, I believe I might have pulled my proposition and said, go ahead, let's have the consultation and then we'll see where we go. But since she's done it afterwards, not just a review, but a consultation, a lengthy process, thrown in the way of the proposition that it's perfectly valid and deserves to be voted for itself. And on the 7th of April, the first mention of consultation was made. I will shortly be publishing the terms of the review of the minimum wage setting process in Jersey. Once it is published, States members will have an opportunity to contribute to the consultation exercise, including in the review. So, well done for that. Perhaps I might, if I was feeling generous, say better late than never, but it is clear to me that a consultation at this small notice is actually the equivalent of a wrecking motion. Saying, and I believe that what we're here is the Minister saying, I've offered a consultation, we shouldn't do anything until that consultation is over. Well, that may well be the case. The next thing I would draw your attention to is the proposed Common Strategic Policy 2018-22. There it is. And I do so because this document is inspirational. It's absolutely inspiring. Statements in here say we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to try and do that are magnificent. The amount of effort that went into the production of this, I remember almost 3 years ago now, being phenomenal. This is the product of every member in this chamber, every member's concerted efforts to make sure we got a strategic policy that was right and appropriate for the island. And so that's where I start, with that document and what it suggests. Because what it suggests is eminently doable, valid and appropriate at this stage in our economy. And what's magnificent about it is the way they have maintained the common strategic policy aims throughout the COVID pandemic. And they say, for example, in the foreword to the government plan, the government aim is that they will protect all islanders, especially those at the highest risk of the effects of COVID-19, will remain our priority as we continue to react to the medical and healthcare challenges. The government actually put improving well-being as one of its main objectives. Absolutely innovative and a good initiative. And laid out the foundations for the Jersey Care model, where they say care will be proactive rather than reactive, self-care, public health prevention and community care will be prioritized. And again, a good piece of work to focus down on community care and prevention methods. Absolutely appropriate as we age as a society. And then we come into the nitty-gritty. We will use the latest policy evidence to bring forward approaches that address the barriers that hold some children back. Remember, part of this document is we will put children first. Address the barriers that hold some children back. For example, living in overcrowded or poor quality housing, living in families with low incomes and limited access to primary care services such as GPs and dentists. We've done something about the cost of GPs. We haven't done anything about dentists yet, but that's, I believe, may well be on its way. But the illustration here is living in families with low incomes. Key to anybody's health, key to anybody's well-being is sufficient income into the household that people can afford things. And in particular, the looking after children is important because from the limited stats we've got, we know that we had some 30+% of our children living in relative low income. And that's a high figure. It's higher, I believe, than that in the UK. And then we get onto some real sharp, good statements. We will reduce income inequality and improve the standard of living. How effective is that? How appropriate that is now after COVID. That's absolutely the right thing to do. And therefore, I would argue we should be backing this up to the hilt. And I believe that's what my proposition does. We will reduce income inequality and improve the standard of living. This strategic priority is explained by the following paragraphs. Our average income per person is high, but this hides large gaps between the highest and the lowest earners. There is a concern about growing levels of income inequality and the negative effect this has on our community and our economy. Income inequality is the thing to fight, because whether you're a wealthy society or a poor society, inequality, differences between one and another, is the big motivator that make people go off the tracks, that give people poor health. And then it goes on. Having a job and reliable income is important for people's well-being and contributes to our island economy. But not everyone can get a suitable job, and some workers find the wages from their full-time job are not enough to meet their living costs. Our document, as we're setting out strategic aims, debated for hours, it seems to me, in my memory. Indeed, I think it was weeks, actually, until we got it right. We were determined to get it right. Not enough to meet their living costs. And that's exactly why I brought a rise to the minimum wage, because people can't make ends meet. We say it. This is an opportunity to do something about it. Entirely appropriate. And finally, and this is where we are sharply focused, we will work towards a fair balance between wages, taxes and benefits. Remember that every low-paid worker, we are effectively subsidising through income support those particular jobs. You're a low-wage paying employer, you're living off the taxpayer. Taxpayer is subbing your workers with income support to make sure they can afford to live in a house, to have 4 walls and a roof. And that's why we need to act. Further on in the text, we will work towards a fair balance between wages, taxes and benefits, rents and living costs to achieve a decent standard of living. A decent standard of living. Not luxury, decent standard of living through meaningful increases on the minimum wage. And there it is. Through meaningful increases on the minimum wage. What better time to act on increasing the minimum wage than now, as we are into recovery from COVID-19 this year and next year by October. We're not talking about acting now and doing it instantly. We're talking about October was the end of the year and October 2022 in order to make that change and increase the minimum wage to a level where everyone can achieve a decent standard of living. That's what we're attempting to do. Why do we need to do this? I produced some evidence in the proposition from the income distribution survey. Remember that that is slightly out of date. It's 2014-15, and we have yet to produce another for 2020 and 2022. Yeah. And what we do know, in spite of the fact that that has not been produced and we haven't got up-to-date figures, I am confident, and I think members should be confident, that the figures that were bad in 2014-15 are going to be even worse. Now, not only did we flatline in terms of the economy and productivity in those 5-10 years, but we've been hit by COVID, which may well be wrecking the economy and destroying jobs. So, for example, what's been going wrong? Well, the first thing to consider is, hey, how come we've got a minimum wage which is below that of Guernsey, the Isle of Man, the UK? Significantly lower than the UK. We know, because we've done the work, it's 20% more expensive, at least, to live here than it is in the UK. And yet our minimum wage has fallen behind our nearest competitors. Why would that be? What are we doing wrong that we haven't at least kept up with them? Although I believe we should be ahead of them. And again, that comes back to some fundamental reasons as to why I'm saying, no, the minimum wage must change. By the end of the year, let's get somewhere. By the end of 2 years, let's get somewhere significant and get those people on the minimum wage above the low income threshold, the relative low income threshold. We've got a proven case that there are too many in our society unable to actually make ends meet. And we should be doing something about it now and over the next 2 years. So, for example, in Jersey, in the decade before 2010, the average earnings index rose by some 13% a year in real terms. The decade since 2010 has seen no growth at all in real terms, with flatlining, as I say. Since 2010, household incomes have increased by less than inflation. We're getting worse off. Median household income after housing costs decreased for non-qualified and social renters, the lowest earners, between 2010 and 2015 in Jersey. This was driven not only by increasing housing costs, that is rent, but also by a reduction in employment income. Average household earnings for those in the lowest quintile, the least well off, fell by 17%. An enormous sum. £1 in £6 reduced from people's incomes. That's a big shock to take. That's what happened on average. Examination of the income deciles reveals that the bottom 10% reveals that the average income of the poorest decile, lowest 10%, fell by a massive 36%. People became significantly poorer than they had been. Our economy is not doing what it should. It's certainly not supporting low earners. That's why we need to move on this. Marmot in the UK, whose work I quote, and it's been quoted in large scale for the last 10 years, said that Marmot concludes that increasingly work is not a way out of poverty and low wages, low benefit levels, and the cost of living. Especially the high cost of housing mean that many working people are in poverty. And yet what we want to do, and part of that is increasing the minimum wage to a reasonable level. We are committed, and this is I'm quoting from Marmot again, but it's very similar to our own document. Our objectives are to give every child the best start in life, to create fair employment and good work, good jobs for all. Don't know that we do that yet. Improve access to good jobs, especially in deprived areas. Ensure a healthy standard of living for all. Create and develop healthy, sustainable places and communities, i.e. ensure that there is a sufficient supply of affordable housing. I don't know that we've done that one yet either. That is work still in hand. Strengthen the role and impact of ill health prevention. And again, return to that initial initiative about we must do something about community health and prevention services in order to be able to keep our population as fit as we can, whilst we increasingly age, some more rapidly than others. So what does this mean? And I'll go to the CRIA to examine the impact on children, because they, I believe, are key to this. We have to do something about children living in poverty. That's got to stop. Question 5. Is a full child's right impact assessment required? Explain your reasons. Like history paper, explain your reasons. The answer they give in the investigation is yes. The impact of low household income on children's rights is considerable. This proposition would begin the process of helping parents who are currently struggling and therefore helping their children. The following quote seems apt, they say. Whilst we are discussing relative poverty, the implications are still clear. It is trite at this point to note that the word poverty does not appear in the Convention of Children's Rights. It is also trite to note that child poverty constitutes a violation of a wide range of children's rights under the CRC, Children's Rights Convention. Living in childhood poverty frequently Living in childhood poverty frequently either results from causes a failure to secure children's economic and social rights, such as the right to the highest attainable standards of health and to education. So there you have it. A proposition, I believe, appropriately timed, although some may argue, to do several things. To request the Minister for Social Security to bring forward the necessary legislative amendments to allow for the minimum wage to be prescribed for 2021 and 22 without referral to the Employment Forum, and to request the Minister to ensure that any prescription of the minimum wage takes into account the view of the Assembly. So for 21 and 22, what I'm saying is let's get to the relative low income level, and that means from £8.32, the current level, to £9.15 by October this year. Secondly, to ensure people remain above the low income threshold, to raise that to £10 in the following year, by the end of 22. That is perfectly doable. The legislative amendments, in order to make sure that we don't have to do this, talk to the, or accept the recommendation of the Employment Forum, I'm sure can be done. Laws can be drafted to get us round that particular barrier. The proposition A1 doesn't talk about levels of minimum wage, just says examine how we set the minimum wage. So the minimum wage should be set with regard to the median wage. Median wage meaning the halfway mark, 50% earn more, 50% earn less. That 50% of the median is the international accepted poverty marker. If you want to compare how well you're doing with another country, that's what you choose, the median. And where's your level? 60% of the median gives us the relative low income level. That's directly comparable to any other economy, any other jurisdiction. And that's what we need to do. So move from the mean to the median. Doesn't require any extra cost, and we can do that. We don't collect the median figure automatically at the moment, every 5 years, but it can be done. It's a relatively straightforward exercise. So we could calculate it. We could measure it year on year. So then from October 2021, minimum wage to be set at the level of the low income threshold, that is 60% of the median wage. And by October 22, lifted to the hourly rate of £10. Then it goes on, this is again the interesting bit, to request the Minister for Social Security, when appointing members of the Employment Forum under paragraph 1 of Schedule 2 of the Employment Jersey Law 2003, to appoint at least 2 members who are representatives of third sector organisations with an interest in the alleviation of poverty. So to change the structure, at the moment we've got a chair, 3 employers, 3 employees, and 3 neutrals. And I'm saying, change the structure. Let's have something in there that says we've got to pay attention to poverty levels. To appoint 2, at least 2, probably 3, with an interest in poverty issues. And let's see what their advice, how their advice changes from what it has been in the past. And then finally, to request the Minister of Social Security, in accordance with Article 19 of the Employment Jersey Law 2003, to refer for examination to the Employment Forum the potential for a minimum wage to be set at the level of the Jersey living wage. And if this were considered feasible, when the minimum wage could be set at that level. The current level for Jersey for the living wage is £10.96. And that sounds like, oh, that's a big gap between what we're talking about, £10 in 2 years' time and onwards. But what Article C does says consult with the Employment Forum about when and how and if we can go to that level. And I think that's a wise way to go forward. So there you have it. I believe a thoroughly respectable and indeed joyful product of the work we've done over the years, and I urge members to support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
The proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Therefore, I open the debate. Deputy Wickenden.
Thank you, sir. The Minister for Social Security has asked me to make these initial comments to give the Assembly a balanced view of the issues in front of us. The Minister will then speak later during this debate. Sir, I'm extremely disappointed that we're having this debate today.
I'm sorry, Deputy. We have a lot of feedback and echo. Could everyone please turn off their microphones unless they're actually using them, please? And let's try that again, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm extremely disappointed that we are having this debate today. As a government, we made a clear commitment in the 2021 government plan to undertake a review of the minimum wage process. The need for the review was crystallised during the debate last year brought by Deputy Southern seeking to set a minimum wage rate at a specific figure. The Solicitor General explained that the Assembly could vote to set a minimum wage rate at any figure they chose, but the Minister was still required to follow the employment law and engage the Employment Forum in a full review before any new rate could actually be set. As an Assembly, members need to agree what the role of the Employment Forum is. Should they continue to recommend minimum wage rates? Do we want to continually second guess them and debate challenges on the minimum wage every year in the future? And what is the best way to get this right for Jersey? So our review will address all of these points and will gather evidence for members to consider in the few months' time. Last year, at the height of the pandemic, it would have been crazy to initiate a minimum wage review, and we agreed with the forum that there would not be a review set a rate for April 2021. During the government set up and implemented very successful emergency schemes to help businesses and co-workers during the pandemic. The co-funded payroll scheme, which has helped many thousands of workers keep their current job and avoid mass unemployment. Quick processing of a significant increase in the number of income support claims received. The CRES scheme to support migrant workers left without employment and unable to get home during travel restrictions. The Spend Local card giving £100 to every man, woman and child in Jersey with an additional extra £100 to everyone on income support. A reduction of 2% in the employee social security contributions for all workers from October 2020 to June 21 this year. This is equivalent to a 2.1% rise in take-home pay for any worker earning below £55,000 a year, compared to an RPI increase of 0.9% that has provided well-targeted support to workers at this difficult time. So we know we need to look at the minimum wage rate, but we also know that the economy has been badly affected by the pandemic. Our review will also gather evidence on timing and rate of a new minimum wage rate. This could be for October this year or April next year. We will be seeking states' approval to use the COVID regulations to allow us to implement the next minimum wage rate without using the normal employment forum routes. So this review is underway and we will report back to the states before the summer recess. The Deputy said in his opening speech that the Minister's consultation is in response to each proposition. I can confirm to the Assembly that that is not the case, and we have been working on the consultation and it has been developed before this proposition was lodged. So Deputy Southern is asking members to set a minimum wage for 2021 and 2022, ignoring the impact of COVID on local businesses, without any understanding of the economic consequences, without gathering any evidence from workers or businesses, and taking no regard for the views of the public. So in 2018, before anyone knew what coronavirus spike was, Reform Jersey published its election manifesto, which included a pledge to seek to raise the minimum wage to £10 an hour by 2022. This is what members are being asked to vote for today. There was no explanation of the £10 an hour figure back in 2018. It was not based on any economic analysis at the time. Here in 2022, the island will be recovering from two of the hardest years in recent history. We need to encourage a rapid recovery of our economy. A political commitment to an arbitrary minimum wage figure with no understanding of the consequences is, in my opinion, the last thing that we need to be signing up to just now. Part A2 of the proposition would mean a 10% rise in the minimum wage rates from October this year, from £8.32 up to £9.15. So again, where is the evidence for this increase? If we are lucky, national governments will ease travel restrictions over the next few months, and local businesses will be able to see an increase in overall activity over the summer. However, is that enough to justify a 10% increase in minimum wage costs? How can we tell? The Deputy has given members no evidence on which to base their decision. The Social Security Minister is undertaking a review as we speak, and we are gathering this evidence now. I urge members to reject this part of the proposition and wait for our report in a couple of months' time. The Deputy also asked for a specific change in the makeup of the employment form. Although it's not clear from his report, he has confirmed that he would like to replace the independent members who sit on the panel today with members who are specifically representative of third sector organisations with an interest in the alleviation of poverty. Given that the review is underway now, and this includes questions on the composition and future role of the employment form, it would be premature to ask members to make a decision on the specific point. Again, I urge members to reject Part B for the time being and to wait for the Minister's review, which will address the overall composition of the forum going forwards. So I can only repeat my disappointment that a political party that claims to be the representative of local people should be so dismissive of a public consultation process. The issues the Deputy has raised in the proposition are important and deserve to be looked at in detail, and members deserve to be given well-researched evidence and arguments to support possible changes. So we don't have any of that today, and I urge members to reject all parts of this proposition, knowing that the results of the public consultation will be published before the summer recess for further debate. The Deputy often talks about figures, comparing them to Guernsey, and the Deputy asks us to look at this figure in isolation. But these figures, such as the minimum wage in Guernsey and the UK, cannot be taken in isolation. In Guernsey, you earn an awful lot less money before you start paying tax. Their health system is far more expensive than we have in Jersey. You have to look at the whole, not just one figure, as the Deputy is asking. So I implore members to reject all parts of this proposition and wait for the end of the consultation that the Minister is taking forward. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Does anyone else wish to speak on this proposition? Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. I'll get the ball rolling, and I'm pleased to follow Deputy Wickenden. And in response, I suppose, to the latter part of his speech, I have to say how proud I am actually to be involved with a political movement that actually seeks to contribute ideas from how to improve the lives of ordinary islanders in the face of a government which is completely bereft of any ideas of its own and is not capable, it seems, of making even the simplest decisions to try to make life better for people without outsourcing it and outsourcing it and outsourcing it, as always. So I think the fact that this proposition is before us, and I guess I share this feeling with the previous speaker, is of course a feeling of disappointment. Although my disappointment stems from a different place to his, I'm disappointed that this proposition is even necessary, because I think actually if we're to live up to the commitments that many of us made in that in-committee debate on Jersey's recovery post-pandemic, and this should have been something the government was doing of its own initiative. The comparisons with other jurisdictions are relevant, sir. Yes, it may well be the case that Guernsey's health system is more expensive than us, but the cost of housing is less there. We have the stats. We know that the cost of living in Jersey, even if we may have a more generous tax allowance or this or that, the cost of living overall here is significantly higher than it is in the UK. yet the UK has a substantially higher minimum wage rate to us. So that ought to be something we find embarrassing, because it's a demonstration that we're letting down the lowest earners in Jersey, and those in government don't seem to be able to treat that with the seriousness that it deserves. And how I wish there were an opportunity, and of course we can't do this because of COVID restrictions, I just wish there was an opportunity to see those in social security who are so adamantly against increasing wages for the lowest paid people in Jersey, to just sit in a room with people on those poverty wages and tell them to their face why they have to live their lives struggling to get by, many of them living in relative poverty despite the fact they're in full-time work, why they're not deserving of political action from those who run the island. And so the consultation that has been launched is unimpressive. It seems to me to lack any particular direction. It seems to me to want to ask for a whole variety of views that will all be branching off in completely disparate directions that won't necessarily be particularly helpful. And a much better use of the consultation would be to state what the minister's thinking or what direction we'd like to get to, and ask people to feed in how we get to it. A consultation on how we get Jersey's minimum wage to a real living wage would have been a consultation that would be worth taking, but it doesn't feel like this one is. But it is helpful for one reason, sir. It helps demonstrate that it's axiomatically true that the process we have is broken. After all, if it wasn't broken, why would the minister feel the need to consult about changing it? That must surely be symbolic of the fact that it's broken and that it's recognised to be broken. And combine that alongside the fact that our minimum wage has fallen behind, significantly behind our neighbours, must surely be a sign that the results of that process are not fit for purpose. And to use a legal term, sir, I'd say perhaps this is a case of res ipsa loquitur. And in the context of clearly being accepted politically that this process is broken, what is the harm then in taking a political decision to fix it slightly, even if only temporarily, and even if only whilst waiting for perhaps a longer term solution whilst the consultation goes on, or if you want to think about doing something subsequent to that? Why not take a political decision that says, we're the leaders of this island, we believe that people in Jersey on low wages have a rough deal and ought to be treated better, so let's at the very least put some sort of sticking plaster on that will help them through the difficult period. Nothing though. We get nothing, and we get opposition to raising our minimum wage. So our minimum wage is £8.32 an hour. That's a poverty wage. To offer a wage to a full-time worker of that level, I would regard as an insult. It is not enough to live on. For people who just want a basic standard of living, that's not good enough, but especially not good enough for people who might have a family or other sorts of commitments. And in one of the wealthiest societies on the planet, they deserve better. And I ask the question, and to those who may speak afterwards in opposition to this proposition, I want to ask them, what's their proposal instead? What will they do to improve life for the lowest paid people in Jersey? Do they have a proposal waiting around the corner? Do they have anything more than, we'll just listen to what a consultation says? Because that's not a substantive answer. What will they do? What will they propose? And so if it's credible and if it will make a difference, then my party will certainly consider supporting it. But when there is nothing on the table, don't have a go at us for trying to put something on the table that will aim to make life better for these people by seeing their wages raised when they're already the lowest paid of all of our neighbours nearby on the island with the highest standard of living. It's simply not a status quo that any of us should be accepting, and that we find ourselves in a situation where any sort of solution is going to be delayed and delayed will be no consolation to people who are living on those wages and who are struggling at the breadline. We can talk about the crisis and say now's not the time and the effect it will have on businesses. I don't have much time for that argument, because do you know what? It sounds exactly like what we were told before the crisis happened in the first place. We're always told now's not the time. And I get the impression that to some people now will never be the time. I think actually as a symbolic move, as we move towards our recovery, to say that our post-COVID society in Jersey, the island that we're so proud to live on, will be one that treats poverty seriously, will be one that says that if you're in full-time work, you should not be living in poverty, and your government is going to be part of helping you move on that journey out of that, rather than pose itself as a constant obstacle, which I'm afraid the previous speech indicated that seems to be what their intention is. So I really don't think it's too much to ask that workers who've been through such a difficult time, who proportionately will have ended up paying the most for the crisis, because these will be people who will have the least amount of savings. There'll be those who will have lost the most job opportunities, unlike people at the other end of society who will have very likely got richer throughout this time, whilst not being asked to contribute anymore in any sort of tax measures. I think we owe it to them that we will make this a fairer society for them after all of this, because if we don't, then frankly we'll have learned nothing from the hardship that we've all been through. I think this proposition is timely. I think it is seeking to undo some of the damage that has been done over recent years, where because of poor political decision making, our minimum wage has been left to fall behind our neighbours and leave many in Jersey living lives that will be worse than if they had been living somewhere else with a higher wage and higher support and lower cost of living as well. I'd be voting in favour of this, all parts of it, but part B in particular, I really don't think the Assistant Minister should dismiss. This is about saying that in that process of determining what future minimum wage rates are, that people whose interest is in the alleviation of poverty should be consulted in this, because that's the point of the minimum wage. It's to give people a decent life when they're in work. And if we're purely going by what businesses have to say about it and not actually considering those who are at the coalface helping people who have fallen through into poverty because of the pretty poor rate of the minimum wage we have now, then I don't know what we're doing, because those people's views absolutely will be necessary. So I urge members to vote for all parts of this proposition, and if they're not prepared to do so, I really would be interested to hear from them what their alternative proposal is for a fairer Jersey after this, because so far I've heard nothing to give me any confidence that anybody is more serious about anything other than offering platitudes.
Very much, Senator Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. And I speak early because I think it's very important that we consider this proposition properly. We don't just dismiss because it's come before us again from somebody who has had a consistent political outlook of doing exactly this. That honesty in terms of what the reason that we're in this assembly has been shown. So sometimes we appear to be living in a world that's more like a film storyline than real life. This last year has certainly shown that. It's been like a strangely dystopian B movie that we've been living in. But today, and during the sitting, it appears that we're more akin to Groundhog Day. This reliving of where we are. And yet again, we have Deputy Southern being absolutely true to his word and his manifesto. I just remind one or two members, perhaps who have spoken before, that the manifesto is what you pledge to do before you are elected. And then you should be acting on that manifesto, because that is the contract that you have with your electorate, that you have been true to your word with. And that is what we are doing in reform. And that is what I think many people would want to do when it comes to a living wage. And that is certainly what Deputy Southern has done repeatedly for throughout his time in this assembly. And I think that needs to be recognised. And so in that Groundhog Day, yet again, we have a government and those who oppose a real increase using this is not the time argument. It is never the time to take action. I'm absolutely certain I've used those words before in this assembly, in my short time in this assembly. And what we have is an absence of real leadership, and an absence of care for those who struggle to survive in our society on low wages. So we've received emails to say why we shouldn't be voting for this yet again, and that's the other Groundhog Day part of this, last minute emails from pressure groups. So one of them suggested that on a minimum wage as being proposed, the increased minimum wage, and part of me makes us look at the manifesto. I think we need to do that again, Deputy. Sorry, sir, I would suggest to the Deputy that we might need to do that again, because even with this increase, working 48-hour week, a 48-hour week hard work in fields, for example, manual work, you're earning £399, and you will pay your social security. You may pay some tax if you're a single person. You may have subsidised housing, but a chunk of that will be taken for housing. You have to buy food, and what we've got, even with what we're calling a living wage, we have survival wages. And we as an assembly sit on these benches or sit in our homes, our comfortable homes, and I'm willing to say that no, we won't even accept that level of wage for people working 48 hours a week. That actually we are willing to give less than that. We are willing to say that we will outsource our morality and our decision making and what people can survive on in this island, and quite happily say, oh no, actually we expect you to live on less than that. Well, so I ask every single individual member of this assembly, what would you accept to live on? And that's not with all of the additional incomes that many may have from being a landlord or from having property or for having income. I'm talking as the only income that you have, with the insecurity of some jobs, perhaps the insecurity of zero wages, the insecurity of your tenancy agreement, the insecurity of knowing where you will be long term, because you cannot save for the future. You cannot save for a mortgage. You cannot put money away for those things in life that might be major life events. And that's the reality of low wages. And so we have a decision in this assembly as we recover, and I'll come back to that in a moment about the debate that we had on recovery. As we recover from this COVID situation, which has been horrendous for so many and has made us all think about what it is that we want our society to be like. Are we going to have a sustainable workforce with a living wage and businesses built upon a sustainable model of a living wage so that workers, one, can survive on what they're being paid, they can will actually want to stay in those jobs because they know they can live on it, and perhaps even develop their skills and their training so we have a more skilled workforce. And there's the recipe starting to develop for an actual positive vision for the future, as opposed to the somewhat nihilistic one that we have at times of low wages, low skilled, transient workforce. Once we start to do that in our society, that's when we start to succeed in this assembly. Now, many people, if you would have looked at your manifestos, I'm sure would have said, yes, I want to see people's lives improve. And we all voted for the common strategic policy. We found an agreement across this assembly. And come on, let's be honest, that's not easy. But we agreed that we would look to reduce income inequality, improve people's lives, and improve the experience of our young people and our children by removing that poverty. Yet we have not succeeded in doing that. And as we come to this debate again, yet again, people will speak and say, we cannot do this now because we cannot afford it. So actually, there are many, many, many businesses, both small and large, that are paying £10 or more per hour to retain their staff, and because they recognise that their staff need that wage. Many of restaurants are. I won't mention the takeaway because I probably shouldn't be using it as much with my figure. But they're paying their delivery drivers at least £10 an hour plus tips. Personally, I don't think you should have tips because you should have a living wage, but we'll come back to that another time. But it is happening. And any sustainable, successful business, one of the first things they are starting to do in a modern economy is to say, we must pay our workers a decent level so that we keep them, we can train them, that they are loyal to us, and we have a better service that we provide. That is the economics we should be talking about. That's the economics of the future of this island. But what we are going to do again is we are going to address the economics of the past, the economics of unsustainability, of vulnerability, and of failure. And so we must move on from that. And the 10% figure that was mentioned by the Assistant Minister, it's 10% of very little, sir. 10% of very little that we're looking to increase it by. And sometimes percentages can be misused. So I mentioned something just simply that we are going to vote for somebody on a board later who we will offer £22,000 for a minimum of 15 days work. We will sit here and be happy to do that. But at the same time, many will not vote to say that actually in October 2022, not even October this year, October 2022, we would say that you should be paid a minimum of £10 an hour. That, sir, is not just a contradiction, it is, or it could be considered to be hypocrisy. And we need to be really certain in this assembly if we are going to build. So the government has poured money into businesses during the last year, and I support that. I understand why it's had to happen. So now is the time that as businesses rebuild, they need to do so in a sustainable way. And the government has shown that it can intervene when it is necessary. And it can intervene to prop businesses up. So if what I would like to have seen from the Minister in this is to say, yes, we accept this amendment, we accept this proposition, but we will amend to put in some support for business to say, if you're struggling with that transition to a decent wage, which we as an assembly and we as a government voted for in the CSP and want to develop right now, we will support you into the long term. And then come to that assembly and ask us to vote on that. I, for one, and I'm pretty sure so, that many others in this assembly have said, yes, that makes sense, let's put some support in place. So I finished by saying that we need leadership. This island is desperate, it's crying out for leadership at a time when we are all looking to the future and wondering what it's going to be like. And there are so many people who are on that low wage, that breadline existence, who are so uncertain about the future. So let's start on the first sitting back with a real positive move for the people of this island to say, yes, we will increase the minimum wage this year by that small amount, I think. And then by October 2022, it will be £10 an hour. And at the same time, we will improve the employment board so that there is input from sectors that really understand what poverty is about. Because poverty is one of the most destructive elements of any society. So let's get the people in who really know what they're talking about. And then, sir, we can act on their advice and we'll come back to us and do exactly that. So this is an opportunity to take action, not consult in terms of taking action, but to actually do something. And I urge members, please listen to what's been said by the Deputy. Listen to what's been suggested realistically in this proposition, not the fantasy land of chicken licking politics that the sky will fall in if we actually make some form of change. And so I urge members to think very carefully and support this as a positive move and a step forward from day one on the return to this assembly. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, there's an echo.
We can hear you quite clearly at the moment, Senator.
Right. I was thinking if you could hear two of me, that would be fabulous for you all. Does Deputy Southern understand basic economics? You know, the scarcity of a particular good drives up the price. You know, if we have too many low qualified people in the population, then the value of the working person is lower, which reflects the importance of immigration control. we're working on it, yes. We need to improve productivity. You know, I have been able to suggest means to improve productivity, but I have been ignored, which is never a pleasant thing for anyone, let alone a politician. And the third factor is that the recommendations of some of our civil servants and the recommendations of our local elected party all have the effect of increasing the cost of living of everybody, including our low-income families. And as a matter of fact, you'll find that the climate change proponents will put our low-income families, including pensioners, into fuel poverty. Deputy Ward quotes the figures from the Farmers Union, but in the email we've received today, their minimum wage that they're actually being paid at the moment is above Deputy Southern's minimum of £366. And finally, where does the money come from? Taxing pensioners? And remember, 75% of our businesses are small businesses. So, you know, it's just going to wreck the other members of the society, not just, you know, not just the low income. What we need to do is to address the productivity first of all. And perhaps I'm not voting for this because I haven't got the data to support Deputy Southern's proposal. You know, I'll support him when I believe that I think he's got the data and the theory correct, but I don't think so at the moment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator. The Connaught Harbour St Mary. Connaught Harbour St Mary. Connaught Harbour St Mary. We can't hear you if you are speaking to us.
I apologise, sir. I hadn't pressed the mute.
Ah, there we are. You're there now.
Thank you. Sir, some of the low-paid businesses always lobby us when the minimum wage is mentioned because they wish to keep the minimum wage exactly that, minimum. Jersey, one of the richest and most expensive places to live, should be setting an example, not pleading poverty. The employer should be paying a fair wage, not expecting to be supported by the taxpayer. If the business cannot survive, then the business should ask the states for a subsidy loan after their audited accounts have been examined. The simple answer is, would any of you work for the minimum wage? Could you survive on that wage? If the answer is no, then you should support the proposition. Thank you, sir.
Senator Moore.
Thank you, sir, and I'm pleased to follow the previous speaker. It's a shame that we don't appear to be having a wide-ranging debate here, as it is a fundamental and very important matter that we all should engage in. Yes, it is, of course, a difficult time given the events of the past 2 years, and yes, there are a great deal of uncertainties, but I do beg to differ with Senator Ferguson and her approach to dealing with those difficulties. If we look back, sir, Deputy Southern has consistently raised this important matter with the Assembly year after year, and we have always as an Assembly fallen back on the point that we had the Employment Forum to recommend the minimum wage increase to us. However, sir, particularly when times are difficult. In order to achieve and deliver real change, we at some point have to change our own behaviour and change the pattern with which has become the norm and branch out. I think it has been a feature of the minimum wage debate across the world, and since it was first mooted, that there have been cries of horror and declarations that jobs would be ultimately lost if a minimum wage was in fact set. And it's been widely reported, sir, that those cries of horror were never actually seen, or the conclusions of those cries of horror were never actually seen. And as the previous speaker just pointed out, Jersey is a highly successful and very rich island. So our Jersey Finance Limited have recently set their own target to approach the finance industry in a sustainable way. Well, in their document, what defines what do we mean by sustainable finance, it highlights the Sustainable Development Goals, which are set by the United Nations. Number one in those Sustainable Development Goals is poverty, no poverty. Therefore, sir, if we are to assist Jersey Finance in their admirable aim to become a sustainable finance centre, which I fully endorse and support, we do have to, as an assembly, tackle this difficult issue and ensure that we really do walk the walk. And so today, I think I will somewhat surprise Senator Deputy Southern by supporting him and stepping in behind him, because we do have to change. Yes, times have been difficult, but time is now to actually adopt new ways of working, to reset how we think about the future, and to really define what we mean, what our vision is for this island and for the families. I take on board, of course, the pleas from both the Chamber of Commerce and the Farmers Union, but there are opportunities for ministers to set special circumstances if there really are good arguments that the packages, employment packages that some sectors give and some employees receive do put them in a different bracket. That can easily be done and achieved, but at the end of the day, we have to, as an assembly, conclude that in order to effect change, we cannot simply carry on doing what we have done before. We have to try and break that mould. And as Senator Ferguson said, through doing something differently, we can actually boost productivity, because businesses will have to consider, one, what the impact will be on their bottom line of increased wage bill, and that, as some businesses have already done, will see that they do their business, run their business in a different way, that they break the mold themselves and become more productive in order to be able to afford that higher wage. So, sir, I commend Deputy Southern today for bringing forward this argument, and I hope that other members will indeed reflect deeply on this important matter and vote to do things differently today, sir. Thank you.
Very much, Senator. Deputy Pinnell.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to take part in this debate. In my previous role as Social Security Minister, I worked closely with the Employment Forum and was always very impressed by the quality of their recommendations. I was very pleased to accept their proposals, knowing that they were balanced and based on good evidence. In the last few years, we have had repeated challenges to these minimum wage rates, and I fully support the Social Security Minister in her review of the overall process. If the Employment Forum is to continue its good work, this needs to be acknowledged and not subject to continual political challenge. The debate today seeks to impose minimum wage rates for this year and next year without any evidence, as mentioned by previous speakers. I do not support this proposition. In my current role as Treasury Minister, I'm acutely aware of the impact of COVID on local businesses. Government has provided enormous sums of money to maintain the Jersey economy. Working with the Social Security Minister, we have also deferred payments due from businesses for both GST and contributions. Businesses now owe the government millions of pounds, which will need to be repaid over the next few years. The latest advice from the Fiscal Policy Panel paints a more pessimistic picture compared to October last year. Yes, the economy will recover, but it will take longer than was originally thought. Government will need to borrow more money, and we should not aim to balance the budget until 2025. Against this difficult background, Deputy Southern has produced no evidence whatsoever that businesses can bear a 10% increase in the minimum wage rate in October this year and another 10% increase next year. A year ago, we were talking about a quick bounce back after COVID. Today, we know it will be a long, slow recovery, and it's vital that we continue to support businesses for the time being. During that recovery, we will need to look at minimum wage rates, but the proposals today are too much and too soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy St Peter.
Thank you, sir. And a very good reason to speak is the opportunity to take off the mask, which is rather suffocating. So I find this proposition extraordinary, and I do not understand why the Deputy hasn't withdrawn it despite his protestations. As we all know, the Social Security Minister is currently out to consultation to review the minimum wage in Jersey. It closes at the end of May. What is relevant, sir, is not the wage. It is the money that actually ends up in the pocket at the end of the day, at the end of the week, and at the end of the month of the individual. We all read a most interesting submission from the Chamber of Commerce received yesterday in our inboxes. It outlined how many businesses include food and accommodation, sometimes free, mostly, have differing charging mechanisms, hugely distorting the actual wage at the end of the day. Now, this has been backed up by an email from Jersey Farmers Union today and is factored into the Minister's consultation. We all therefore need the outcome of this detailed study to ensure these benefits are accurately factored into the calculations to ensure parity, and parity is the key word here, so parity across the minimum and living wage. I have been contacted by concerned retailers who rigorously manage their outgoings and their P&I. The feedback is clear. Those businesses already run on very tight margins, and if this is implemented, we'll have to seriously evaluate their viability. Now, we all know our retail businesses are currently struggling, and I accept the proposition will take effect effectively in autumn 2022, but the outlook as of today is not clear. What is clear is the consultation will be closed, and I expect the outcomes actioned by this government. So I'm afraid the consequences of this are premature, have again not been fully thought through, and we must wait for the outcome of Deputy Martin's review. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Young.
Thank you, sir. I'm very concerned about this debate. Coming into it, I thought that really we were working together between Deputy Southern and the Minister to try and end up with a situation which we could all support. And my starting point was, I remember when I got elected, I took part in a government plan process and we attempted our common strategic priorities. You remember those? And one of those was to reduce income inequality and improve the standard of living. And we made really bold commitments on that. And then we had another one, putting children first at the heart of all of our decisions. And of course, what happens in low-income families to children? They would definitely, the effects of that poverty affects those children crucially and the outcomes of their lives. So we signed up to those things. And I'm struggling to find where did we set this aim about 60%? But I remember it being somewhere, but I can't pin it down on the document. While the debate's going on, I've been searching through, trying to pin through all the labyrinth of reports that we produced. But I recall that. And so I was hopeful that those are really sound objectives. And Deputy Ward, I wrote down, he made two really key points to me. That what we have as a government, we've put enormous public support into industries, particularly affected, why I believe, by low wage economy. We put enormous public money into that. And I think we try to help those industries, but I think it cuts both ways. I think it may well be that some of the marginal employment may go. And I think that, that's something we may have to just acknowledge and find transitional systems with training or whatever we do. The COVID is going to create a different type of economy. So with those two things, and then so equality, children first and public support. So Deputy Ward reminded us of that. And of course, so I'm really struggling. That's why I was hopeful that I could come up with something to support. And yeah, we got an amendment, but then what we heard was, I think, a very unpleasant tone of knocking reform. I think that's really not the right way to do things. We should try and find ways of working together. Now, I do think equally, because I've been critical of that there are some real issues with the process that Deputy Southern has adopted here. Because if there is a consultation process running, then is it right that you suddenly come in and say on part A3 in the proposition, well, we're going to make a decision about what happens in October 2022, 18 months away. We don't know how the state of that economy is going to be. We're going to find out. We're going to have to provide support and so on. Whereas when I see part 2, which seems to be, I think, what the argument is about, because I think, it says October 21, 60%. And the proposition says, well, bring forward the necessary administrative vehicle to put this into effect. Now, the timing wise, we're told that the consultation finishes in May. So, even adopting this proposition today, we're going to send up in the same place. And if there's a logical argument why that 60%, which was, I believe, an objective we set right at the start of government, can't be done, we're going to hear it at that time. So as a direction of travel, I'm very persuaded that we should do something about low-income employment. Because after all, we're subsidising low-income employment through income support from housing allowance. Millions of pounds spent on that, propping up, low-wage, low incomes. Maybe not the only one, but there's an element of it there. I remember in previous assemblies, and I don't often agree with many things he said, but the former deputy, Andrew Lewis, I can remember him saying there was an overwhelming case for having a decent minimum wage, because otherwise we just subsidize it. So it's a principle. There's a principle. I think there's some strong arguments for the direction of travel. Now, I wish, I'm really uncomfortable having to vote in a way which is, because I don't want to make it life difficult for my ministerial colleagues, although I'm probably now finished up more one of the ones on the left of these now we've lost others in the Council of Ministers. I don't like doing it because they're really hard-working people, and they're my minister colleagues, I have every respect for them. But what I really dislike is where we end up with these debates where, it's become all this tension of, well, it's reform and so on. And equally, I think some of the comments, and I'll be critical of some, I'm not going to name them, but I think that now and again we get comments from the reform members also that wind that up. And I'd like to see that reduced so that we can work together and try and find a solution to these things. Now, I'd hope, and of course, what I see in Deputy Southern, there's this child impact. When you read through this, the child right impact assessment. We don't see many of those, do we? And you look at it when you read through this, you know, have I misread this? Are there, you know, there's arguments here by loads of arguments of why we should be going in this direction of travel. It seems to be the argument is about the pace. And so I would like to, you know, I struggle, you know, to make decisions here now for October 22. I think it's too far in advance. We don't yet know that. I think that's kind of been put on the end. But I can see the point that we should now lock into a process where we start to deliver what I think we signed up for in the government plan, which we took to the states. So the first one, not the last one, it was all numbers, the last one. The first one, or sorry, common strategic priorities, that's right. We did all those lovely videos and said all those fine things, you remember. So I'm struggling. I don't know whether to abstain. I don't feel comfortable voting against my ministerial colleagues, but I really don't feel I'm very unhappy voting against this proposition. Ideally, I'd quite like the opportunity to vote for part of it, so that from October 21 we can have that direction of travel, leaving out the October 22 decision, which I think predates. And one last thing, I do actually agree with Deputy Morell. I think we have been very inclined to outsource a lot of our policy making through various, all these very, very sophisticated structures. I think there's a direction of travel that should be repatriated, but that can't be done overnight. We've got a lot of excellent people, but I think we do need to become more involved. And this is one of my plea to the next government and the next assembly, that we can be less reliant upon that and be more bolder, prepared to set our own policy directions and stick with it. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Connie Harbison-Brillard.
Thank you, sir. And I would give great credit to Deputy Southern for once again bringing this proposition back to the Assembly. I've heard it before, and there are reasonable arguments, but I would say in a position of conflict as an employer, not only in the parish but privately, the reality of the situation at the moment in Jersey is if you pay minimum wage, you're unlikely to get any staff, because there is such a shortage that you have to pay more than minimum wage to get the staff you want. And I suspect that prevails throughout the industry. I'm not going to speak much more but to say, sir, that the impacts of immigration, migration, the continuing efforts of the pandemic really dictate the way this should go. And I would urge members to support the Social Security Minister in following the proper process and seeing this through, get the information at the end of May, and let's see where we go from there. She has the information. It's a balanced approach, and I would urge members to reject the proposition on that basis. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Senator Pallett.
Thank you, sir. I think it's only right that I speak as the leader of Jersey's other political party, but I really just want to go back to Deputy Young's speech. Deputy Young said a lot of what I was thinking, and I'm not going to repeat what he said, but there's much in this proposition that I think we do need to take seriously, and we do need to really consider carefully, because we must get to a point where we reach a living wage, where the island can be proud to look at itself from the outside in, and be proud of not having a minimum wage set that is currently as low as it is, because I don't think it does us anything reputationally internationally. I don't think it enhances our reputation. I don't think subsidised low wages is something that we really want to be known for, but I'm afraid at the moment that's where we seem to currently sit. This is, somebody said this, I forget who it was, said this was an extraordinary proposition. It's not an extraordinary proposition. I think most of us will understand why Deputy Southern has brought it, and the political ambition that he and his colleagues have to drive change around minimum wage and living wage. They do it because, and I'm not trying to stick up for reform, because they're good at, they're quite capable of doing it themselves. But there were bold commitments made in the strategic plan, of which most of us signed up to. One of the areas where I'd like to think I had some input was around well-being, and I think ensuring that especially families in this island and children are looked after is a huge part of island life, something that we should protect. And part of that is ensuring that people can earn enough money to be able to look after their family, look after the children, look after their wife. And at the moment, I can certainly understand how there will be some that will be struggling in an island that's got such a high cost of living, high cost of housing, and we've, you know, it's almost every sitting that we talk about housing and the unaffordability of housing, and it's something that we need to address moving forward. But that's where probably I part company with reform, certainly at the current time. We have been through a difficult 18 months, there's no doubt about that. Some of our sectors, some of our economic sectors have weathered the storm relatively well, but there are others, such as hospitality, retail, and certainly agriculture, that have found it extremely difficult during that period of time and are finding it increasingly difficult to source staff. Some may say, actually, by having a living wage, you might attract more people to the island, and I think there's some argument in that. But at the current time, there is a risk that a lot of these businesses, certainly in the hospitality sector, retail sector, has been said, I think will be put at risk financially and within their viability. And I do think we need to be extremely cautious about what we do over the next year or so, while we recover from the damaging effects of an international pandemic. There is some consultation that the ministers launched. What I would like to see is all sectors paying the living wage. To do that, I think we need to start looking at how we're going to transition certain parts of the economy through that difficult period. All of them have got ideas about how they can reach that, whether it's the Farmers Union, whether it's hospitality. They all, I think, nobody I've spoken to doesn't want to be in a position where they could pay the living wage. The issue is how they transition to it. It's a job of government to try to get to a point where they can start to put ideas in front of them that will allow them to get to that point. And we're not there yet. I'm not going to criticise reform for not having those answers in there in today's proposition, but I think we do need those answers. There is going to be consequences of increasing the minimum wage right now, but we do need to reach a better minimum wage or the living wage within a relatively short period of time, and that's something I think myself and my colleagues are going to be looking at very closely over the coming months. The Employment do an excellent job. The Employment Forum do an excellent job. I think at the current time, we've got to look at the advice that they give us, and I think we've got to abide by that advice, at least for the foreseeable future. I want to see people, lower paid members of our society, in a position where they can afford decent accommodation, where they can afford to feed their children in the way that they want. But it has to be at a time, and it has to be in a time frame that is not going to put our economy or the recovery of the economy at risk. I know detractors of what I've just said will say, well, now's the time to do that, pay a living wage, get people off of subsidised income support and various other things. But I think the timing is important. I will press and I will work hard towards ensuring that at some point everybody in this island has a living wage. But I think it is around timing. I think we do need to take on board some of the comments made by representative bodies, all of which I've met over the last couple of weeks, all of which I think really want to pay their staff as much as they can, but they find themselves in a position where there are a lot of factors that are affecting their financial viability, and this might, not with all, but might with some, just tip them over the edge. So this is not an extraordinary proposition. It's one I can't support at the current time, but I will, and I think I have to, as we move forward, work towards a policy around the living wage and reaching it in the not too distant future, because we need to commit to that. Internationally, we shouldn't be known or shouldn't be seen as a jurisdiction that pays a minimum wage at the level it's set now. But now it's just the timing. I've got a lot of sympathy with what has been said by those that are a little bit more to the left than I am. But this is not a ridiculous proposition. It's far from it. But I think we need to think about the balance and strike a balance here. But unfortunately, at the current time, I can't support this proposition. But there will come a time when I'll be proud to support a decent living wage for all workers in Jersey. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Chief Minister.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sorry, sir. I'm actually delighted to follow the previous speaker, sir, because it is all about timing, and we did make the commitment about moving to a living wage, sir. And as the previous speaker correctly identified, which hopefully has not escaped too many members, the events of the last more than 12 months now have been extraordinary, and of course that will have an impact on plans, sir. And in terms of timing, it is just worth reminding members, assuming my facts I've understood them correctly, is that originally, sir, we had the P11 as it was lodged, which was lodged on the 25th of February. And that did result in some discussions between the Minister and Deputy Southern, and indeed, sir, some changes taking place in the consultation document that is now going ahead, sir. What we're actually debating, sir, is the result of the amendment he lodged last Thursday. And the impact of that amendment is significant because it says that we're going to put the essentially look at the minimum wage going up, but we're not going to consult the employment forum. And that is quite a significant change, and that's why on this measure, because I have a lot of sympathy for what Deputy Young has said as well, but that is why this measure, sir, is now not being supported by the Minister, because of the late amendment that came through. I'm obviously keeping it quite short, sir. So I think it's worth also making the point that a commitment was made to have a review of the minimum wage in the 2021 government plan. That's to look at the process. The public consultation has now been published. That's looking at the review of the way in which the minimum wage is set, and also considering the level and timing of the next minimum wage increase. It's not been written with a specific outcome in mind, and it's also important to look at international evidence, but it is also incredibly important to listen to local people and find a solution that works for Jersey. There are all very good reasons for moving to a living wage, but the pandemic has had a huge impact. But also, please do not forget that we have put in significant measures to support many, many people on this island in the last 12 months, and some of those obviously still continue. So really, sir, if the Deputy probably hadn't brought in his amendment and proposed the proposition as amended, I think, sir, there would have been a different outcome from the perspective of the Minister and the Council Ministers. But we are debating it as amended. It specifically talks about not consulting or referring to the Employment Forum. That is a process we've had in play. And on that basis, sir, that's why, for example, I cannot support this proposition, but as amended. The consultation, sir, is taking place, and that will come back, sir, through the Minister to the Assembly.
Thank you very much, Chief Minister. Senator Valdwar.
Yes, thank you, sir. So, being in the States for over 12 years now, I think I've heard all the arguments against minimum wage increases a number of times and repetitively stated. So let's create that dose of reality. Is it ever going to happen for Jersey? Because there's always a reason not to do so. So there was the financial crisis. We couldn't increase it then all the excuses that are made in between, and now that we've had the pandemic, but yet other countries have managed to do so during these times and have been successful at doing it. I also remind members, if the council of ministers were willing to put a cap on rental increases or house price increases, then maybe I should vote against this, but that's never going to happen, isn't it? And when we talk about not too distant future, well, next October is not too distant future. And we have to bear in mind that when the Assistant Minister was referring to the list of support that was provided last year, those very workers who were working on that front line, putting themselves at risk during a pandemic, you know, the nursing care in the nursing homes, the retail, the hospitality, the people that kept us going when times were really getting tough, many of those people are those that may be on those minimum wage levels. And yet that hasn't been mentioned yet during this debate by anybody. And I have to remind that the taxpayer money that has been spent to support business has been driven during the pandemic, majority of the funds of which are from the working population and not the business. So I repeat myself, sir, when is a good time? When is the right time for Jersey to reach the minimum wage that is needed to have an actual living rather than just pure survival? So, sir, I just wanted to make those points because I do not feel like they've actually been mentioned during this debate. But when we talk about the support that we've provided and the crises that we've seen, not just over the last year, but over the last 10, 12 years, whether it's to do with financial crisis or the many other issues that we've faced, Deputy Ward referred to this issue of leadership, and I think it comes to the crunch and it comes to the point where we have to put our marker in the sand and decide when it is we're actually going to do this and stop relying on people who are not elected to tell us what we should and shouldn't be doing. I have to bear in mind the fact that there will be an election next year and there will be an opportunity for members of the public to decide. Maybe that's something that each member should put forward, whether they do or do not support a living wage or an increase in the minimum wage. And maybe that's the opportunity then. But sir, at this point in time, I'll be supporting Deputy Southern's proposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak on the proposition, Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. And there's been some very good speeches, actually, from Senator Valwa, Deputy Young, Deputy Southern, and others. And I just want to say to members, why did we enter politics in the first place? Some people I know felt that they wanted to contribute to the public good. Others entered politics to further their own interests. Others for status. I know I entered politics because I wanted to see some change. In 2008, when I came into the States, I was appalled by the policies that were being pursued. And I wonder how many of them have actually changed. For example, we've still got the same housing crisis that we had way back then. We had unaffordable properties, which meant that our children couldn't afford to buy a house or get a flat, or were having to leave the island. We had people on subsistence wages, whereby they just about survive and we keep them there. And for those deputies, and I say deputies because deputies by and large do a lot of the casework, we're dealing with families who are struggling to survive and are relying on food banks and handouts in other ways. And to be honest, what's changed? Nothing. As a deputy, I've been so frustrated, especially over the last 3 years, because we have achieved some good social policies, but we haven't dealt with the fundamental issues. Population, we're still kicking it down the road. And I'll tell you where I stand. I believe that we need to bring in a strict population policy. Yes, we need essential workers and we need to keep the economy going, but not the sort of free-for-all that many in industry would want, because more people who come in depresses wages. I'm appalled by the system that we've got, whereby bad employers are subsidised by the state through income support, and we're paying housing costs because they're not earning enough. I'm so fed up with this, and things have got to change. And so I would say to members, I believe our economic model is broken. It's been broken for the whole time I've been in the States, and trying to get change has been almost impossible. But I ask you, time is short. We've got just over a year before the next election. I would like to see us deliver on some of the things that we have actually stood for, and make the changes that we need to change. And so I've consistently supported a living wage for as long as I've been in the States. And I do believe that we don't really look at these things holistically. For example, we talk about the money we pay out in income support. Look at the money we're giving certain industries in subsidies. And again, going back to what I think, sorry, I'm not sure who actually mentioned it, about the support we've given industry over the last year or so. I fully support what we've done to keep businesses going and to keep people in employment. But we've now come to the stage where we've got to look at what we've done in the past and say things have got to change. We can't go on. All these businesses that have been supported can no longer in the future pay no tax. We can't just rely on the person in employment to pay tax. We're going to see, I sound like a broken record on this, over the years, we've seen technological change and it's going rapidly. We're going to see even greater unemployment in the future. And we're going to see our tax base eroded. So we've got to look at new ways of doing it. We've got to look at the balance, the inequality. We have to look at all these issues. And I do believe the states need to get real, and we need to start now. And let's start paying our workers a living wage going forward. And let's deal with the housing crisis, let's deal with the population crisis, and all the other things that have afflicted this island. So as I say, why did you enter politics? Well, I hope it was to do something good. All I will say at the moment is that I will be supporting Deputy Southern, one, because I'm consistent, I've got principles, and I want to see this island better in the future. Thank you, sir.
Much. A point of order is raised by the Conitap Group.
Yes, thank you, sir. I may have misheard the deputy, but I think he said that some members had joined the states to further their own interests, and I'm wondering whether that's parliamentary, sir. I certainly don't think it's true.
Well, I think
I've gone deaf.
no, you haven't. I haven't spoken.
All right, sorry.
Charles and Xavier. The standing orders do prevent, of course, any speech that impugns the integrity or motives of members of the Assembly. In my view, suggesting members were in it for their own interests is perilously close to doing so, but I don't think it necessarily crosses the line at this point, and therefore I will not rule that out of order. But it's a valid point of order. I think I would have welcomed more time to reflect upon that, and I probably should have reflected on it on earlier occasions. But at this point, I make no ruling upon it.
Thank you,
I may make a ruling upon it on some other occasion.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, Conitap. Deputy Martin.
Thank you, sir. And I thank members for the contributions to the debate so far. And at this point, I would like to reflect on the timing of this debate and why I will be asking members to reject all parts of the proposition. For several years now, the Assembly has debated regular challenges to the recommendations put forward by the Employment Forum. We didn't have that in 19. The Employment Forum put forward an increase in April and in October of that year, and we were actually getting on track, so it was going up and it was going up steadily. And then we had COVID, so. But even last year, so we went into lockdown on the 30th of March and the minimum wage went up on the 1st of April. So I couldn't ask the forum to go out last year, it just wasn't practical. The forum, sir, is a voluntary body made up of 3 employee representatives, 3 employer representatives and 3 independent members. I appoint the forum members and they serve in a voluntary capacity. They have played an important role in establishing and maintaining minimum wage. They also help me as the Minister to investigate and make recommendations on changes to other areas of the employment law. And I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank them for the hard work and dedication in fulfilling this role. As Minister, I find myself in a difficult position. There is increasing political interest amongst states members in the minimum wage rate, probably rightly so. And there are regular debates on the subject. How should I instruct the forum to undertake its review in this context? How would the voluntary members of the forum react if their findings were overturned by the Assembly? Would they want to continue to support the government on an unpaid basis? To resolve this, I added the commitment in the 2021 government plan to investigate this area, and I have now published my consultation. While the consultation is underway, I urge states members to defer any decision on the further composition of the role of the Employment Forum until I can report back to members on the outcome of the consultation. I did meet with Deputy Southern twice on the 2nd and the 7th of April to tell him and show him eventually the consultation paper. And I told him we had included the majority of his points in that consultation. And unfortunately, the Deputy muted at one point that he might defer the debate, but we are where we are and we're here today. I think there is now a fairly settled opinion amongst ministers and backbenchers that the local minimum wage rate does need to rise to a higher level, and that we should be encouraging a higher wage economy across all sectors. That said, sir, these moves must be taken carefully to avoid damaging the jobs and businesses in our economy today. In simple terms, Deputy Southern is asking for a 10% rise, which is approximately £9.15 an hour for the minimum wage this year, and a further 10% rise next year to £10 an hour. Senator Mesic said, what is the harm? So we already have an extra, from this time last year, 310 people out of work, people who want the work, who have lost their jobs. We have also people on income support now who aren't getting the extra hours because the business they work for is already struggling, sir. Please take these people in mind when you vote. The island is facing challenging times, and the government has taken exceptional steps last year to support the workers and maintain the local economy. But as I've just said, many did lose their work and many lost extra hours. During 2020, we helped workers with over 100 million of wage support through the co-funded payroll scheme. We have increased the take-home pay of all workers through a cut in social security contributions, and that will be in until the end of June. Despite COVID, we have also introduced new schemes during 2020 to lower income support families. I launched the Health Access Scheme last year. This supports the cost of GP visits with all services free to children, and it is heavily subsidised for the adults. This scheme is covering 11,500 people. My consultation includes questions on setting the minimum wage rate for October 21 or April 22, I need to hear from businesses, from trade unions, from self-employed, the people, from general public, from states members who speak to their people, their constituents. I'm going to be pushing this consultation everywhere over the next 6 weeks, and then I will take it to scrutiny when it comes back. I don't have the answers today, sir, but I can assure you I don't believe Deputy Southern does too. But I'm not knocking Deputy Southern. I know it is a reform pledge and he's absolutely got the right to bring his pledges. As Deputy Mezich says, they set out their pledges in the manifesto, absolute right to bring them. It doesn't mean everybody needs to support them. To be clear, sir, I'm not arguing against an increase in the minimum wage. I'm not even arguing that at some point it should be the living wage, but we need to give businesses time to get there. It's on this basis on economic analysts. It does not include, sorry, sir. It is not based on any economic analyst, and it does not include any comments or options from local businesses or worker organisations as to the likely impact of these changes. Members can read my consultation R62, and I just read out for you the key issues. Who should be involved in reviewing the minimum wage? Should it be an independent body as now? A mix of politicians, employers, employees, representatives, an expert body made up of a professional economists, statisticians, and those experienced in the areas of low pay. How often should the minimum wage rate be subject to a full review? Annually, as it has been the norm, or over a longer period, 3 to 4 years, as like the Assembly. But then we should set it against something so it rises every year. What statistics should be used to help set the rate? What other criteria should be used to set the rate? What level should the rate be set for 21 and 22 while the changes to the implement of any new system is being undertaken? So I'm very clear that we are running a consultation not on the back of Deputy Southern's proposition. Work was ongoing on this, and it was when Deputy Southern actually asked the Chief Minister, when I hear comments, I asked to speak to him because I thought we've got a paper that's nearly ready to go. And even in the own Deputy's words then, when I met him, he said, well, when I read it, it might be good for me to postpone my debate. That weren't my words, sir, that was the Deputy's words. But we're here today. When the consultation comes back separately, I would be seeking permission from members to use COVID enabling regulations to allow one minimum wage increase to be set outside the normal legal process without reference to the employment forum. This would allow for a minimum wage rate to be set later this year, if that is the conclusion of the consultation and is supported by members. The consultation report will also set out a proposal for the minimum wage process for the future, and as states members, as I've already said, it is really important you get on board with this work and speak to the local businesses. And when I've got this in and we know where we're going, I will then be discussing it with scrutiny. Ministers are often criticised for taking decisions without taking account of the views of the public. Today, a backbencher is asking us to do that. Senator Walworth said, maybe in the next election that people should put down what they think the minimum wage will be and talk. All states members, sir, I can't emphasise enough, have that opportunity in the next 6 weeks. if they think we're missing some industries or we're not talking to the right people, but we're pushing it and pushing it. I just want to emphasise what you are voting for today, and it says to request the Social Security Minister to bring forward the necessary legislation amendments to allow for the minimum wage to be prescribed for 2021 and 22 without a referral to the Employment Forum. That amendment was right because we weren't using the forum either this year without the consultation. And to request the Minister to ensure that any prescription of the minimum wage takes into account the view of the Assembly. Any minister who didn't actually take the whole view of the Assembly would be a very silly minister. If you vote for £9.15 for the October this year and £10 for October next year, that's what the minister would have to bring back. Again, I'm not sure if I could do it for 22 using the COVID rules, but that's very clear. And I just say to members, if you're 100% sure you know businesses can do this, there won't be more unemployment through this, you will then vote for Deputy Southern. I was very interested to hear the solution from the Constable of St Mary, who said he thinks that every company should be paying their workers the living wage. But if they can't afford it, after they've done their accounts, they should get a top up from the taxpayer. Now, sir, I don't know where that money would be coming from or how that would work, but that's the way the Constable is thinking. I'm sorry we're having this debate because I think we're all wanting to go in the same direction. And I know that when we had the economic recovery debate, in committee debate, many members spoke about the living wage and how we we need it. But that was in between COVID-1 lockdown and COVID-2 lockdown. Some businesses are just about started to go back, and some have got really, not working to full capacity because they haven't got visitors here, and that hits on to other industries. So I really do ask members to reject every part because the consultation covers everything, and this gives you a chance. It's just a short 6-week. And it is a concentrated consultation, it's a meaningful consultation, and that's where members should be putting their effort, making sure their views, the people they represent's views are known, and when it comes back, we will act on that. So please do not support the proposition in any form today. Thank you.
Senator Farnham.
Thank you, sir. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on our economy, sir, the effects of which will continue for some time. In fact, the recent advice from the Fiscal Policy Panel suggests it's going to go on longer than we had anticipated or hoped so. But the pandemic has shone a light on the resilience of business in Jersey and has accelerated many of the challenges that businesses in Jersey face around productive growth. Jersey businesses have suffered significant economic shock, sir, as a consequence of the combination of both the pandemic, sir, and now Brexit. And many have had to exhaust reserves, increase borrowing and debt, defer GST and social security contributions in order, sir, simply to survive. And many of the businesses, sir, with help, of course, have managed to retain the majority of their staff, sir. A short-term move by the states at this time that creates a higher cost base through an increase in the minimum wage. So, and that is not just an increase at the lowest end, so the ripple effect of the minimum wage is felt through the whole staff structures of businesses, sir. So we mustn't underestimate the cost. So it doesn't just relate to that increase in the lowest level of pay, sir, it pushes right through the pay structures. But to increase the cost base, sir, at this point, at a point where the co-funded payroll scheme, and we must remember the co-funded payroll scheme wasn't really business support, sir. It was support to protect jobs, because employees and businesses were reimbursed for wages they have already paid out. So it wasn't technically business support, although it did enable businesses to continue to employ staff, sir, and keep their businesses moving, sir, and operating through the darkest days of the pandemic. And of course, other support is being phased out, as we announced recently. And so any move now to increase the cost base would be counterproductive and would significantly, in my opinion, undermine some businesses' ability to maintain current staffing levels, and consequently, sir, that puts the island's economic recovery at risk, especially in the hardest hit sectors at this pivotal point, sir, of the recovery process. So in the context of this debate, we must note again, sir, that not all support has been aimed at businesses. Employee social security rates have been reduced. We have had the CREST scheme and single payments to low income households, sir. We mustn't lose sight of that. It might not be considered to be an awful lot, sir, but it certainly has been useful, I know, to many islanders. Over the past 12 months, our Future Economy programme has developed clearer priority cornerstone objectives for Jersey's future economy, which will shape the resultant economic framework. Productivity remains a core and a key priority, but it does sit alongside other priorities, for example, around household resilience, skills and environmental sustainability, so as demanded by this Assembly. Productivity support is also being considered in this broader context, as we need to transition to the living wage, and because of the huge upheaval over the last year, we are not yet at that stage, as much as we would have liked to have been. I know, sir, I don't think any of us sit in this Assembly for status. We all do it because we want to help people and we want to help our island, and we're all aiming for the same goal here. And as such, it's important to ensure that businesses have the right tools, the right advice and the right support in order to regroup, restructure their businesses and their finances, and address productivity improvements, which in turn will allow for higher wages to be paid, sir, in a sustainable way. So I urge members today, sir, to allow the Social Security Minister to gather the evidence from employees and their staff, as this will protect jobs in the short term and lead us all to where we want to be in relation to a more prosperous and higher wage economy, sir, for all islanders. Thank you.
Deputy Ward has a point of clarification.
Sorry, sir, I do apologise. I was just wondering whether the Minister could explain what the clearer cornerstone priority objectives meant. It was quoted in his speech. I've never heard the phrase before, and I just think it would add. It's just not clear, and this is a point of clarification as to what he means by that.
Priority objective.
That's what I jotted down, sir. I may have missed the word out.
I have to say I didn't hear that phrase myself, but are you able to clarify what that was, Senator Farnham?
Yes, sir. I recall, sir, that was referring to productivity that remained a core priority of the economic, of the Future Economy programme and the economic framework, sir. And I said that the productivity remains a key priority, but it does sit alongside other priorities, sir, which will also be at the cornerstone of the plan, which include household resilience, skills and environmental sustainability, sir, as demanded by the Assembly.
Thank you very much, Senator. Yes, does any other member Connor Tarbison, John? The tradition is that that's left to the end of the first speech, but
So the content, yes, sir.
So I come from a commercial background. I understand the genuine struggles of many, many businesses across various sectors. We read last week that over £1 million has been committed to a museum for agriculture. Well, if we don't help that industry, we may need a larger museum. Work is needed on the cost of employment in Jersey. Those businesses who rely on seasonal workers are paying government too much money for licenses, money that could be being paid in wages. Could business social security payments be reduced for seasonal workers at the lower end? What can government do to help these sectors who need assistance? We've just heard about the importance of productivity from the previous speaker, but I'm aware of a fiscal stimulus bid that fell at the first hurdle, a bid that was designed to help businesses from all sectors to improve their productivity, a bid that would have helped strengthen businesses turned down. Whilst in the middle of a consultation period, we have seen government departments' budgets boosted by funds, despite no planning permission, and as I say, supposedly during the middle of a consultation period by fiscal stimulus funds. Yet today, we're asked to wait until consultation on this subject has finished. As mentioned earlier, I can confirm that new businesses generally have to pay more than the figures proposed to attract staff. I was shocked to hear the Minister say she didn't know how much government would save if this proposal was successful. We need the data to make decisions. Some of the savings could be used to support businesses, for example, with that social security contribution on seasonal workers. Yes, accommodation values need to be increased to give the recognition that is deserved when calculating the hourly rates. One of the first things I've seen in the Chamber is the pledge to putting children first. A vote against this proposition doesn't, in my opinion, put the children of low-income families first. The impact on families on low wages is real. Only today we've heard that 12 months after the pandemic, some children are only now getting access to electronic devices, devices they should have had 12 months ago at the start of the pandemic. Sir, in my view, the government priorities need to change. This proposal gives them until October to find solutions. The consultation that the government should be doing, in my opinion, is with businesses. What is needed to bridge the gap, and what can be done to assist them to ensure they can pay a reasonable wage? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, Conor. Well, does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Constable John, you might note in the chat a number of people are saying approbation. You might recognise that had they been here, they would have been stamping their feet, and that is the equivalent. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak on the proposition, then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Southern to respond.
Thank you, sir, and thank you one and all for contributing to the debate. It's a very interesting debate, even if it's my 7th time I've done it. And before I pick on anybody to praise, I'm in a positive mood today. Can I just say that I wish to take this proposition in parts. All of the parts can stand alone. So we've got A, 1, 2 and 3.
You'd wish to take A1 separately, A2 separately, A1, A3, yep. And then the separate letters. Yes.
A1 in particular, because it doesn't talk about a pay rise. It says change the mechanism and look to the median rather than the mean, so we can compare things properly. Similarly, Part B talks about a way of going forward with some experts or some people who are interested in poverty issues, which could make a useful contribution. And again, that should be separate. Indeed, one of the deputies, Deputy St. Ballard's, was focusing on, I'm not sure about 18 months' time, I may be more sure about immediately. So A2 and 3 can also be separated. You might want to vote for A2, but not A3 because it's longer term, or vice versa. So I think just bear in mind that you can vote for this in bits, and we might get somewhere, some of it through, which would be a joyful process for me. And if I keep on putting these pieces of paper around, eventually the top sheet will become obvious. Sorry, I'm having a bit of, no, that's where I started. There you are, Wickenden. And yeah, that's extremely relevant because 3 or 4 people have said, I can't vote for any of this. Do have a consideration, I mean, don't think about that. There are some bits that even at the worst are not harmful, which do point the way forward. Right, in some detail then, Deputy Wickenden talked about, avoided talking about, he was talking about the timing, and in effect what we've got here is a minimum wage freeze imposed for something like 18 months. And that's quite significant for people who haven't seen a pay rise in 18 months and won't see a pay rise in 18 months. That's further hardship in many cases. And we should be careful about leaving people like that. And quite rightly, he mentioned that the £10 an hour is not quite a figure plucked from the skies, but something that is a manifesto commitment. And I'm not far from ashamed to say, and that's the sort of thing we as a party will be doing increasingly, delivering or attempting to deliver on manifesto promises. Absolutely essential. Deputy Wickenden also questioned my knowledge of economics, and I somewhat object to that. I'm not an economist by training, but I've picked up a bit. And one of the things I've picked up on is that wealth does not trickle downwards. If you want to change people's economic position and change the economy, then you have to put money in at the bottom end, because it does rise. Because if you put money into the bottom end, all of that gets spent usually in the local economy. Whereas put it in at the top end, it doesn't trickle down, doesn't get spent, not always here, gets spent elsewhere. And therefore, if you really want to boost your economy, do it at the bottom end. It's one thing I have learnt and stick by. I thank Deputy Mezek for supporting, as he would expect, what we're doing. And he did mention that, hang on, and this is a fundamental change that we need to recognise, that the minimum wage decision is not just an economic one. It's a political one, because we decide where we want to set those figures, and we should. The minister seemed to take quite an amount of pride in the fact that the recommendations and the wishes of the Employment Forum never get overturned. And I'm thinking, no, well, sometimes they should be, because they're not guaranteed to get everything right. And bear in mind, what they do is recommend. They don't insist, they recommend. So it's actually open for any Social Security Minister to actually say, oh yes, I've taken into consideration your recommendation, but I believe we should do more or less, one thing or another. And now somebody, 2 or 3 people, talked about the high cost of living in Jersey and who is going to come to work in Jersey. And I think that's maybe a frightening thought, that actually, if we do not do something about our minimum wage, then poor paid workers ain't going to be coming to us to pick up potatoes or man our hospitality outlets. They're going to be going somewhere else, because they know that the minimum wage there is, I don't know, 20% higher, 10% higher, whatever. And then we're not going to be able to attract the workers to Jersey. There's a frightening thought. That's what would that do to our economy? And then we had a contribution from Senator Ferguson, who also said who will come to the island. And the Constable of St Mary, thank you for his support. I thank him for his support. Right. And surprisingly, Senator Moore decided on this occasion, she said, we need real change. We have to change our behaviours. And I believe she's absolutely right. And I would welcome her support. Deputy Pinnell spoke out in what looks like support of poverty wages, as I expected, I'm afraid. Deputy Young, increasingly nowadays, does on the one hand and on the other, and it seems to take ages to agonise over which way should I go. I would urge him to follow his instincts and to support what I was proposing, because I think his heart, that's where his heart was, rather than elsewhere. Senator Pallett, I thank him for his contribution and his reference to people do notice. If you're paying a lousy minimum wage to some of your workers, people do internationally, people don't notice. Okay? And it does actually spoil our reputation. If we can't be bothered to pay our workers decently, then that is a black mark in many jurisdictions. And Senator Valois, I thank her for her contribution, absolutely. She kept saying, when will a good time be? When is a good time to do anything? And she was right to do that. I thank the Deputy Higgins and the Deputy Martin. Says we can do one rise this year more easily than can we do two. Now, I don't understand why that might be, but I would argue, and I think it's probable, that there's a different fix to put in there to say that Article 18 of the Employment Law will not count for these 2 years, and so we'll do something else while we set up the new scheme. And as she said, her mechanism was going to cut out the employment forum anyway, not just my amendment, and that was it. That'll do nicely. And it was a pleasure to hear from the Constable of St John, and I wait to hear or to see what his vote is, because I couldn't quite work out which way he's going to go. I thank him for that. Gosh, I've had a good afternoon tonight, today. And I call for the bell, sir.
Yes, we wish to take them all separately, I think.
All separate, sir.
A moment.
And I hope I can get the right button to press.
Very well. Well, the appellate's called for. The first vote then will be on paragraph A1. So that's A Roman 1. And I ask, the referee has placed a vote in the voting link. I open the voting and ask members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. The A1 has been rejected, 19 votes pour, 23 votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and 2 votes pour and 1 vote contre in the chat. The next vote is on A Roman 2. I ask the greffier to place a link in the chat. I open the voting and ask members to vote in the normal way. The vote is on A Roman 2. Sorry.
41.
Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. And I ask the greffier to close the vote.
Sorry, the delay, sir. Councillor Conch.
I beg your pardon, who just spoke then?
Apologies, sir.
Yes, all right then. Well, I will note that vote. I've noted 4 votes so far in the chat. And ask the greffier to close the voting. And A Roman 2 has been defeated, 18 votes pour, 24 votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and 2 votes pour and 2 votes contre in the chat.
Could we have the names, please?
I beg your pardon?
Could we have the names, please?
Yes. If you'd read out the votes, please, greffier.
Those voting pour in the chat, Senator Moore and the Connétable of St Saviour. And in the link, those voting for Senator Valois, Deputy Doublé, Deputy Gardner, Deputy Ward, the Connétable of St Mary, Senator Mezek, Deputy Lehegara, the Connétable of St Martin, Deputy Alves, Deputy Higgins, Deputy Young, the Connétable of St Peter and St Brelard, the Connétable of St John and St Lawrence, the Deputy of St John, Deputy Pamplin and Deputy Southern. Those voting contre. In the chat, the Deputy of St Mary and Senator Le Fondre, and in the link, the Deputy of St Martin, Deputy Wickenden, Deputy Guida, Senator Farnham, Deputy Labby, the Connétable of Grouville and St Clement, Deputy Ayer, Senator Le Fondre, okay, Deputy Lewis, the Connétable of St Helier, the Deputy of St Peter, Deputy Ash, the Deputy of St Juan, Senator Pallett, Senator Ferguson, Deputy Pinnell, Senator Gorst, Deputy Martin, the Deputy of Trinity, the Conotab of Trinity, Deputy Truscott, and the Conotab of St. Juan, the Deputy of Greville.
Well, we now move to a vote on A Roman 3. And I ask the greffier to put a link into the chat. The link has been posted in the chat. I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote.
Cool. 44.
Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. A3 has been defeated. 19 votes pour, 25 votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and 1 vote pour in the chat.
Could we have those voting contre, please?
Those voting contre.
Sorry, there's something wrong with the system. Those voting contre in the link, Deputy Wickenden, the Conotab of Greville, Deputy Guida, the Deputy of St Martin, Deputy Labby, Senator Lafondre, Senator Farnham, the Conotab of Trinity, Deputy Lewis, Conotab of St Helier, Deputy of St Peter, Senator Ferguson, Deputy Young, Deputy Martin, Senator Pallett, the Conotab of St Juan, Deputy Truscott, Senator Gorst, the Conotab of St Brelard, the Deputy of St Juan, Deputy Ash, the Deputy of Trinity, Conotab of St Clement, Deputy Pinnell, and the Deputy of Greville.
Very well, we now come on to a vote on paragraph B of the proposition. And I ask the greffier to post a link into the chat. The link has been posted. I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Ask the greffier to close the voting. And paragraph B also has been defeated. 20 votes pour, 24 votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and 1 vote contre and 1 vote pour in the chat. The final vote is on paragraph C. And I ask when it's available, the greffier to post a link. And I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. And that has been passed. 22 votes pour, 20 votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 2 votes pour in the chat. Very well.
So I might just congratulate the deputy on winning part of it, and also voting throughout via the chat. Thank you.
Very well. The next item of public business, and I imagine we could get through this relatively quickly, is the Social Security Tribunal appointment of Deputy Chair, P12, lodged by the Minister for Social Security. For purposes of this debate, the main responder will be the Chair of the Health and Social Services Scrutiny Panel, and I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion to appoint, in accordance with Article 33A of the Social Security Jersey Law 1974, further to a process overseen by the Jersey Appointments Commission, the following person as Deputy Chair of the Social Security Tribunal for the period stated against their name. Advocate Barbara Corbett, 5 years.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I have 3 separate Social Security Tribunal appointment recommendations today to appoint a legal across all 4 tribunals to ensure consistency of the process and decision making. This role will.
I'm afraid you're breaking up. I'm afraid you're breaking up, Minister. You're echoing in and out. I don't know if anyone has any microphones turned on that shouldn't be. Could they switch them off? And let's see if that improves.
Yeah, I didn't put my camera on for that reason because I found it was doing that earlier. But shall I try again?
Well, you're sounding better now, so please carry on.
Thank you, sir. I have 3 separate Social Security Tribunal appointment recommendations for today to appoint a legal chair across all 3 tribunals to ensure consistency of process and decision making. The role requires a qualified lawyer with a certificate to practice and at least 5 years experience in the relevant role. A formal recruitment process was undertaken by the Judicial Gref. 3 candidates applied and were all interviewed by the Judicial Gref, the Chief Medical Officer and a commissioner appointed on behalf of the Jersey Appointments Commission. The panel decided to appoint Advocate Barbara Corbett as legal deputy chair for all 3 Social Security panels. The first of which is the Social Security Tribunal, which is appeals on the range of benefits under the Social Security Jersey Law 1974, including income support and health insurance laws. The panel consists of a legally qualified chair or deputy chair and 2 lay members. So I'm very pleased that Advocate Corbett has agreed to take on this important role, and I propose the appointment and ask members to support the proposition and agree her appointment for a 5-year term of office from today.
Very much, Minister. Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for proposing this, and I note that the candidate is a woman, but just because there is one element of diversity doesn't mean that we should not look at wider aspects. So I wanted to ask the Minister, has the rest of the panel been appointed already? Are there standing members and we're just appointing the chair today, or is it we are appointing a chair and then the members will follow? And if there are already, if there is already a constituted panel, could the Minister just give some information about the diversity amongst the rest of the panel, please? Because I do think it's important that we take that into account when we're making these decisions. Thank you.
Your point of order raised by Senator Valwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. The proposition refers to Article 33A of the Social Security Law 1974. Upon reading that particular article, it states that the Minister shall by order prescribe the constitution of the Social Security Tribunal. So I have to ask from yourself, sir, as the chair, how this proposition prescribes with the requirements of that said article.
I'm afraid I'm not in a position to answer that without referring to the law, which I don't have in front of me, Senator Valwa. If it says that it's the Constitution that has to be provided for by order, that is the composition, not the individual names who fulfil the roles made up in that composition. But I would have to check on the matter, and I'm not in a position to do so at the moment, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you, sir. I just wanted to understand what it meant in terms of the, because it states the order, and therefore a proposition wouldn't necessarily be needed if it's an order by the Minister. Have I got that correct?
Well, if it says that an appointment can be made by order, then that's correct. A proposition doesn't need to come before the Assembly. But I'm afraid I'm not able to advise the Assembly as to the provisions of the law and what it means in this instance without having it in front of me and the opportunity to reflect, I'm afraid. But if it is the case that the Assembly has approved any appointment, then clearly, even if it is done by order subsequently, that's simply a reinforcement of the position.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Very much. Any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wish to speak? I call on the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. And it's not the chair, it's the deputy chair, a deputy chair across all these three tribunals today. From memory, I think I brought the chair and some of the lay members before Christmas, and from memory again, I think it was a mix of men and women, but I haven't got that information for the Deputy Dubé, but I'm 99% sure it was, I think it was 2 women and a man that were chairs across the different tribunals.
Very well. Do you call for the appel then, or can we take it on a standing vote?
It's up to members, so I'm
Yes,
quite...
indeed. But you have no particular preference.
No.
Yes, Minister. If any member wishes to have the matter put on a formally recorded vote, please indicate in the chat now. Otherwise, I will take the matter on a standing vote.
Sir, if I may ask for the appel to be taken in fairness to the applicant.
Yes, indeed. Very well. I ask the greffier to place a link in the chat. And ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 40 votes for, no votes contra, no abstentions in the link, and a further 2 votes for in the chat. Well, the next item of public business is the Social Security Medical Appeal Tribunal. Yes?
Sorry, could we have the 2 abstentions, please, in the...
I'm sorry, I didn't see any abstentions. My screen must be a little...
There's 2 in the link, sir.
Yes, you're quite right, there is. I didn't see them, I'm afraid. You can have the 2 abstentions, yes, Deputy.
The members abstaining were Deputy Doublé and Senator Valois.
Very well. The next item of public business is the Social Security Medical Appeal Tribunal appointment of Deputy Chair. And I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion to appoint, in accordance with Article 34 of the Social Security Jersey Law 1974, further to a process overseen by the Jersey Appointments Commission, the following person as Deputy Chair of the Social Security Medical Appeal Tribunal for the period stated against their name. Advocate Barbara Corbett, 5 years.
Do you make the same proposition, Minister?
Yes, the second is to appoint Advocate Barbara Corbett as Deputy Chair of the Social Security Medical Appeal Board. The panel consists of legally qualified Chair or Deputy Chair and 2 medical practitioners to hear appeals regarding the award of long-term incapacity allowance. I'm pleased that Advocate Corbett has agreed to take on this role, and I propose this appointment and ask members to support the proposition and agree to her appointment for 5 years.
Is the proposition seconded? The proposition seconded.
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Just to clarify my reasons for abstaining, I will be abstaining from this vote and the next, very reluctantly, because I know that the candidate is extremely high caliber and I fully support her for these roles, but I feel it's important that I stick to my principles, and in the past have requested more information on the diverse characteristics candidates for these types of roles, and I firmly believe that this information should be provided so that states members can make informed decisions about these roles, and the information could be provided in confidence or otherwise, but I will be sticking to my principles despite the fact that I fully support the candidate for this role.
Deputy Mary? Deputy Mary?
Thank you, sir. Simply to respond to Deputy Doublé's comment, which I do appreciate, but I do note the appointment is under the oversight of the Appointments Commission undertaken by the Judicial Greffier, and my understanding is that they themselves have regard to the diversity regulations or unofficial regulations which we put in place. And for my own part, I know of the proposed vice chair. I'm aware of her calibre, and it matters not to me whether the other members of the panel are of whatever gender. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask the Minister if she could, in her summing up, respond about the concern or the possibility of, I don't know if conflicts of interest are the right, it's not conflicts of their own interest, but conflicts arising due to the fact that you have the same people on the same panels. The report states that it's important to have consistency, but at the same time, I do question the situation where you have perhaps one person, an islander, who's appearing both before the Social Security Tribunal and before the Social Security Medical Appeals Tribunal, and is rejected in the first instance, and how that could then, if the same people are hearing a different appeal, but for the same person on a different tribunal, how that could then colour their kind of response and their decision making on that tribunal. So it just seems to me a little odd that we have the same people across all the tribunals. And so I was wondering if the Minister could respond to that. Thank you, sir.
Any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Young.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to balance up the debate. I think we should recognise that as an island, our community is extremely fortunate to have such a very, very high quality candidate come forward. Very well experienced, and I frankly ideal for the role. And I think, you know, it's a 5-year to take on the task of 3 different tribunals as a deputy chair. I think is very, very, you know, is a very comforting that somebody is prepared to do that. Because it, you know, my guess is that there will be quite the commitment being made there. And as for regard the last person, I'm sure everybody knows, I think with experienced lawyers, you can absolutely understand, sorry, you absolutely recognise that they will certainly manage the conflict of interest by avoiding putting themselves in those situations and withdraw. And that's why we have a chair and a deputy chair and other members. So that's, I'm very pleased with this. I think it's a great move.
Senator Valwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. I just want to clarify my point of order was not to try to stop any kind of appointment in whatever way. It's no reflection of the person that's being put forward. I wonder whether the minister can explain, because particularly in the proposition, it states and refers to Article 33A of the Social Security Law. It does not refer to anything with regards to appointments. It does refer to the Constitution of the Social Security Tribunal, and it does state that the minister shall by order prescribe such a constitution, and also whether there will be any pay to any member, both in Article 33A and in Article 34 for the Medical Appeals Tribunal. So I ask the Minister why it was deemed fit to bring the proposition forward and why it wasn't placed in terms of an order, and whether the payments that are paid out are equivalent to those that are seen in terms of director board membership that we see in other areas of government boards and tribunals and sectors that help to assist us in our public sector work.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak on the proposition, then I call upon the Minister to respond.
No, so I absolutely thank Deputy Dewray for explaining her reason to abstain. These have been lodged for quite a few weeks. If she'd wanted any more information, I could have provided it. I do know 1 man and 2 women applied, and it was a woman, obviously, that we're asking to appoint today. I think that the Appointments Commission tries to advertise in a way that you get as many people across the board. But again, it must be somebody legal on this particular board and must have already practiced for a 5-year certificate. To the point of Deputy Volva, I don't know. I've got the proposition. I've done this a few times now, and it's always come to the Assembly. If I could have been done by order, I'm sure I would have done it by order. But this is what I've been told needs to do. It does need to change, but we are where we are. And the chairman's rates are for the day, but may be paid in half days, depending on the length of the tribunal hearing. The chairman is always paid half a day for writing up the decision, and the chairman, all tribunals, is 440, deputy chair 440, medical practitioner 440, sorry, that's 440 I'm saying, and a lay member is £102. I hope that helps the deputy, the senator. Thank you. And ask for the appel, sir.
Yes, did you ask for the appel? Ask the greffier to place a link in the chat. And I open the voting and ask members to vote in the normal way. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. And the proposition has been adopted. 40 votes pour, 2 votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and 1 vote pour in the chat.
We have the 2 cons, please, sir.
The members voting contre, Deputy Southern and Deputy Ward.
Now I assume that members are content to proceed to deal with the last item, just the last item of this appointment. Well, Deputy Labby, you've proposed the adjournment, so I think I have to allow that proposition.
Cancel that, sir. I'll withdraw that.
Okay, very much. Then let's deal with Income Support Medical Appeal Tribunal appointment of Deputy Chair P14 lodged by the same Minister. Ask the Secretary to read the proposition.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion to appoint, in accordance with Article 9 of the Income Support Jersey Law 2007, further to a process overseen by the Jersey Appointments Commission, the following person as Deputy Chair of the Income Support Medical Appeal Tribunal for the period stated against their name. Advocate Barbara Corbett, 5 years.
You make the same proposition, Minister.
Yes, I make the same proposition for Advocate Barbara Corbett, but this is for the Social Security Tribunal appointment. And the tribunal hears appeals on the award of impairment component under the income support system and any other decisions made on medical grounds, plus care requirements for home carers, etc. So once again, sir, I'm pleased to say that Advocate Corbett has agreed to take on this role, and I make the proposition, sir.
Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Any member wish to speak? Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And just to point out that in her opening speech, the Minister said this is for the Social Security Tribunal. It's indeed for the Income Support Medical Appeal Tribunal. And I would ask the Minister to do me the courtesy responding to the question that I asked in the previous proposition, and to go a little further and to explain how, given that they have the same people on the same panels, if she could explain how the tribunals handle the possibility of determining in different tribunals for the same people, and so how they handle those conflicts. And I would really appreciate the courtesy of her replying to that. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. And I want to reiterate what was just said and from previous. And although I have no issue, perhaps with the person, the individual involved, it's about the role. And I think we need to be very clear as to whether there is any possible problem with the interaction of the 2 roles, with income support and social security. And if somebody does have 2 judgments, will that person see anything different if it's the same person? So I do have a slight issue with that. And also over the payment levels, I think I was part of a principle I will be voting against all of the appointments to boards that are being paid significant amounts of money for their work when we cannot vote for a minimum wage increase. So, sir, I would like to ask a question regarding that possible conflict of interest, so I have a greater understanding of it. Thank you, sir.
Senator Farnham.
Thank you, sir. Whilst I, of course, always respect the fact that members can ask questions at any time, I'm surprised at the previous 2 speakers' questions. Firstly, I thought Deputy Youngs articulated the position very well. I know Deputy Morell was waiting for an answer from the Minister, but I wonder, when we have and I sometimes wonder why candidates put their names forward when we subject to them to this. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with questioning, and scrutiny is a good thing, and I'm sure the Minister will address the concerns they raise. But I just want to reiterate, we have a good candidate who I know would have thought extremely carefully about conflicts, or the potential conflicts, or the perception of conflicts. So thank you.
Very much, Senator. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Young.
Just to say, sir, look, I do understand what Deputy Ward is coming from here, and it's a shame that we have to do these sort of things when we've got such an outstanding candidate. And frankly, you know, this issue about fees, you know, later on we're going to be talking about much bigger sums for the SOJDC. But here we've got a local lawyer who could earn much bigger, I'm sure does, in practice. and getting those sort of fees and giving up that time for 5 years on three. My word, that's a big commitment, and I think we should be so thankful we've got people like that in the island still prepared to do this. So thank you.
Deputy Dublin.
Thank you, sir. And again, I do want to reiterate thanks to the candidate for standing, and my reasons are the same for abstaining. Incidentally, I hit the wrong button previously and I meant to abstain. But I just wanted to reiterate from something that the Minister said on the previous proposition. She implied that I should have requested this diversity information. Well, I just want to make it clear that for any appointment that's coming to the Assembly, that this diversity information should be shared, and I don't believe that ministers should be waiting for a request. There should be something that comes as standard, so I hope that all ministers will be forthcoming. And indeed, some ministers have started to do this. I believe Senator Farnham did this the last time he brought an appointment to the Assembly, so I would hope that this could be standard in future, please, from all ministers.
Very much. Deputy, does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Yes, thank you, sir. I had no intention of being discourteous to Deputy Morrell. It just completely set my mind, and I thought Deputy Young had answered the question. But all the tribunals I'm looking at, they have a chair, a deputy chair, two medical and lay members, and each tribunal only needs one of each. So if you have seen one-on-one the chair, then you might need the deputy chair. If you've seen one medical, you see the different medical, you could request that. And then there's the pool of lay members. So hopefully those conflicts don't happen. We are doing a lot more work on diversity. I am the minister responsible for diversity, and I did ask who applied for the work. The job, so it's one male and two females. We didn't get too many to choose from. This time, the best candidate was appointed. So the recruitment process was from the Judicial Breast Tribunal took over the recruitment of the panel members in late 2017. Prior to this, it was done by the Social Security Department. The recruitment information for this appointment was a commissioner was appointed by the Jersey Appointments Commission, who sat on the shortlisting and interviews. The position was advertised through gov.je and the Law Society. I have a copy of the advert, and 3 people applied. All 3 candidates were shortlisted, sir, and interviewed, and it was Advocate Michael Corbett who was appointed, sir, with the permission of the Assembly. Make the proposition.
Well, ask the FA to place a link into the vote, the chat, I should say. And I open the voting and ask members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, ask the Referee to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 41 votes pour, no votes contre, 1 abstention in the link, and a further 4 votes pour notified in the chat. Very well. Is the adjournment proposed? Yes, the adjournment is proposed. The Assembly stands adjourned until 9:30 tomorrow morning. I haven't actually left the chamber yet.